When I was in high school, I met this girl named Jennifer and her brother Sam, and me and her brother ended up secretly dating for quite a while. We kept our relationship a secret because we knew his parents wouldn't approve because they were so religious and strict. Jennifer, Sam, and me were like this little tight trio that really loved each other, and we were always together. There wasn't a thing we couldn't tell each other. We got very close. But unfortunately, about a year and a half later, Sam got into a car wreck and died, and that just destroyed me and Jennifer. She and I ended up trauma bonding over losing Sam, and we just went off the deep end. One day in school, Jennifer passes me a note and says, "I want you to come stay at my house for a slumber party this weekend." And I said, okay. But when I got there, the only other person there was her half-sister, Stephanie. So it was just me, Jennifer, and Stephanie there. So we hang out, talk, listen to music, do our makeup, just girly things, up until about 12 o'clock that night. And all of a sudden, Jennifer says, "Hey, let's go down to the basement. I want to show y'all something." So Jennifer squats down in front of me and says, "Do you want to see Sam again?" And I said, "What are you talking about, Jennifer? He's gone. We can't see him again." And she said, "Yes, we can." So apparently the weekend before, Jennifer and Stephanie went to a carnival down at the beach. And while they were there, they ran into a fortune teller named Miss Shelby. Allegedly, Jennifer tells Miss Shelby, "My brother died and I miss him." And Miss Shelby tells her, "You want to see him again? Bring me $600 and I'll show you how." So Jennifer pays the money and Miss Shelby gives her directions on how to perform this weird ritual. Jennifer believed her and went straight home and tried it. So I'm sitting here listening to this like, "Jennifer, do you hear yourself? You're talking about messing with a Ouija board. Like, this can get really bad." Jennifer said, "I don't care. I saw him. Don't you want to see him too?" Jennifer said Miss Shelby told her she had to have something from his body, like his hair, eyelashes, teeth, nails, a part of him, and the only thing she could think of was their baby books where her mom collected their first teeth, lock of hair, their first eyelashes that fell out, the first fingernail clippings, their umbilical cord. Their mom kept everything from when they were babies. So she had real pieces of her brother to use in this ritual. Miss Shelby told her whoever was in the circle had to put their own blood in the bowl. While that candle's burning that bowl full of stuff, we're supposed to be on the Ouija board calling out to him. So she said we have to call out his name, his full name repeatedly, and at some point we're going to see him appear in the room before that candle burns that bowl of stuff up. Even if you don't see him, you're going to feel his presence because you're basically bringing him there with that ritual. So Jennifer comes back in the room with a Ouija board, a candle, a bowl, and some of her brother's hair. So she took one of those sugar checkers and pricked our fingers, and we all put a drop in the bowl with her brother's hair. So she set that up and puts the Ouija board down and tells us all three to put our hands on the planchette, and we did. I don't know what the hell we were thinking. I can't even believe we did that. We were teenagers. We did not really know or understand what we were messing around with. So we all three start calling out his full name with our hands on the Ouija board. So we do that for over an hour, but nobody saw or felt anything. Jennifer said when she first did it, it took over 2 hours before she saw it. About an hour and a half later, Stephanie said, "Look, I'm tired, y'all. I mean, if y'all want to keep doing it, you can, but I'm going to go lay down." So she went and got on the couch, fell asleep. I told Jennifer I was tired too, and she begged me, "No, Alicia, please stay, please. I know, I feel it, we're close." So we keep calling Sam's name, and we keep looking through the planchette, and then finally, she saw a glimpse of what she thought was Sam. Me and Jennifer are face to face, and she goes, and I said, "What?" She said, "Sam's right behind you. He's here." And it was so weird because right when she said that, you know how it feels when you close your eyes and someone stands over you? You can't see him, but you can still feel it. That's how it felt. Like he was right there, but I couldn't see him. She said he looks so sad, like something's wrong. He looks scared. Jennifer said, "Sam, are you okay?" And she swore that he shook his head no. She said then his face looked like he was getting angry, like he was upset. And she said, "Are you angry that I brought you here? If so, I can stop." And then she said he shook his head no, like he didn't want her to stop. This whole time, she was seeing him behind me. I wasn't seeing anything. So finally, Jennifer said, "He's got his arms wrapped around you, Alicia. He's hugging you." And I just broke down and started crying. I said, "Jennifer, I'm about to break down. Like, we got to stop for a minute. I need a break." So we took our hands off the planchette and we let go of each other's hands. So I go to the bathroom and I'm peeing, and then I get up to wash my hands. And while I'm looking into the mirror, I catch a smell like it smells just like his cologne. And I don't mean like his bottle of cologne. I mean like the way it smelled when he wore it. Like his natural smell and the cologne together. It felt just like he was standing beside me hugging me or something. Like he was right there. I like wash my face and come out the bathroom. And when I look at Jennifer, she's still sitting in front of the Ouija board. So I walk over and she's just stone-faced. I said, "Are you okay?" She said, "I just saw my brother right here face to face and he told me he needed me and then he disappeared." After we got done, something told me to scrub that bowl thoroughly and get my out of it because I didn't want nobody to be able to use it against me later. We had a really good experience. It felt like we both started to heal and got not closure, but some type of closure, and we could begin to move on from this. From that point, I began moving on. You know, I started talking to other people, making new friends, but unfortunately, Jennifer didn't. She became obsessed with doing this ritual. About 2 weeks later, I go back to Jennifer's house, and I noticed the candle sitting on her bedroom dresser, and the first candle is already burnt halfway down where she's been doing this so much. I said, "Jennifer, please tell me you're not doing this every day, all day." And she said, "No, just every night around 2 or 3 o'clock. That's the best time to do it. I can hear his voice. I can smell his cologne. Like, it's like my brother is here with me. It's like he's back. I said, Jennifer, you know he's not really here though, right? Like, he's not back with us. We can't bring him back. And she said, oh, I know. I said, look, just please be careful messing with that damn board, because you know what everybody says. It invites other darker spirits in the room with you, so they could get attached to you. And she said, I don't care. As long as I get to see my brother, that's all I care about. A couple weeks later, her mom finds out she has the Ouija board and tells her she has to get rid of it. And Jennifer ends up attacking her mother and tells her, no, I'm not getting rid of the board. Jennifer had never gotten aggressive or done anything like that before, especially not her own family. She wouldn't even hurt a fly. So I could tell something drastic was going on with her, like she was changing. She calls me up and says, Alicia, Sam wants to see you again. I want you to come over and do it with me again. And I said, no, I'm not doing it again. She said, well, you at least come see me. I miss you. And I said, yeah, I'll come tomorrow. The next evening, I go to her house, and when I get to her bedroom, I can see that her fingers are all pricked up where she's been putting her blood in that bowl. And I see all these melted candles where she's been doing this nonstop. I said, Jennifer, what are you going to do? Burn through every candle in the house? You're doing this way too much. She said, don't tell me what to do. You don't know what I'm going through. You didn't lose your brother. I said, you're right. I don't know what you're going through. He wasn't my brother, but I loved him too. I can't say my experience is just like yours, but I'm hurting as well. But we can't keep doing this. It's got to stop. And when I tell you that girl jumped up and got in my face, she said, how do you plan to stop me? And I said, I'm not trying to stop you. I'm just saying it has to stop because you're getting out of control with it. But I think had I tried to take the candles away from her or try to stop her, like she would have physically became combative because she was that irate. Later that night, about 10 o'clock, I'm sitting on my bed at my house doing some homework when all of a sudden my bedroom door quickly swings open, but nobody's there. There was nobody else in the house but me and my parents, and they were already in bed. I say loudly, go away, leave me alone. And then the bedroom door just closes back. It doesn't click shut, but it went back to the door frame. So at 3:23 a.m., I abruptly wake up. Look around, nobody's there. My gut was screaming at me, something is here with you. I don't know what it is, but it's here in this room. I just got the creepiest feeling. I looked up at my bedroom door, and I could see this face in the crack, like out in the hallway, and that face was just sitting there staring at me. I pulled the covers over my head and just sat there, and I could hear whatever it was, like shifting around the room. And I said, go away. And then it finally stopped. The next day, I talked to Jennifer at school. She's back looking happy as ever, fresh, cleaned up, hair done. And I said, well, I'm glad to see you look better, like you're doing good. She said, well, I'm in a great mood. I said, why? She said, because I'm going to get to see Sam again. I'm going to be with him. She told me that Sam told her he was in danger and he needed her to come to the other side and save him, or at least be there with him to protect him. I said, whoa, Jennifer, what do you mean? He's dead. You can't be with him. She said, no, I can be with him on another plane. If I unalive myself at the same place where he died, our souls will be attached and we can be on that plane together. Now, I'm just standing here in the middle of the high school hallway looking at her like, you've lost it. I said, Jennifer, that would destroy your mom and daddy. Don't do that to them. Please, they've already lost your brother. Your family cannot take this again. Please don't do that. And then she gets in my face and says, you better not tell anybody or I will send him to you. And I said, send who to me? And then she squinted her eyes and said, you know who. You saw him last night, didn't you? And I said, that was you? Why would you do that to me? Why are you putting this dark shit off on me? I've never been nothing but a good friend to you. I love Sam too. But I knew right then, this has got to stop. So I finally did the right thing, and I told a guidance counselor what Jennifer was planning on doing, and he contacted her parents and told them, so they were able to stop her. Her parents went down in the basement, and they took everything. I mean, the candles, the board, the bowl, all his baby stuff, all of it, and threw it away. And when Jennifer saw it was gone, she flipped out and attacked her parents. It got so bad that her mom had to have her institutionalized for about a year because she kept trying to go be with Sam. And because they had thrown everything away, she threatened to go dig up his body and take a piece of him so she could at least do the ritual and be able to see him again. Like, it got that bad. But eventually they got her help for mental health, and she got put into therapy, and she started to heal, and within a couple of years she started doing better. To this day, we don't think what she was messing with was Sam. We think it was something a lot darker, pure evil, and probably something that wanted to take her or her soul, because it weren't Sam. Because the Sam that we knew and loved would never ask her to do that. He would want her to continue with her life, move on, and grow up and love herself.
I have a really creepy story to tell you. This gave me shivers, because why are people so weird? So somebody actually inboxed me this story, and it actually happened to them. And girl, I'm sorry this happened to you. For the nature of the story, we're going to call the person that sent me this Amy. So Amy works in an old folks home. She loves the job. She often works night shifts. When she works night shifts, she has to walk home. She lives in a quite built up city. It's quite well lit, but she knows this like the back of her hand. So when she finishes her night shifts, anytime between 1 a.m. to 3 a.m, she has to walk home. Like I said, she knows this city like the back of her hand, so she takes some shortcuts, and these shortcuts involve walking down alleyways that aren't very well lit, which as a woman, I don't recommend anybody doing, no matter how much you know your city. So on this particular night, she finishes around 2 a.m. and she walks home. This night is memorable for the obvious reason what I'm telling you about, but also because it was the first snowfall of the winter, so everything was quite well lit because of the white snow. So when she walks down this alleyway as a shortcut that isn't lit, she could kind of see because of the snow, but also because of people's backyards, they have lights that are automatically turned on when Amy walks by them. This kind of feels a bit like a horror movie. Amy is walking down this alleyway, and as she's walking, she's being illuminated because she's triggering these backyard lights. And as she approaches one area, it triggers the backyard, and she sees a figure pretty much in front of her, just standing there. She's kind of looking at it, thinking, is that a real person? Like, I don't know what I'm looking at. But as she's walking, she notices that she's seeing a face, and this face is like excited. It's got a really excited grin, like, ew, no. Anyway, Amy's hard as nails. She approaches this figure thinking it's probably somebody just outside in their backyard at 2 a.m. As she walks closer, she notices that it's a man, and he has this expression on his face that's very, very excited. Creep. So Amy kind of stops dead in her tracks, and this guy kind of like peers forward with this really excitable grin, and she takes a step back. Now Amy's really confused, and he walks closer towards her. Amy's backing up the entire time, and he says, "Hi Amy, do you remember me?" Amy's silent, as we both would be. Amy doesn't know this guy, never met him in her life. And then he says, "Amy, I've missed you, Amy. Have you missed me?" Again, he's walking closer towards her with this fucking terrifying grin. Amy doesn't waste a second. She turns around and she runs. She runs straight back to her workplace. As she's running, she hears somebody running behind her. This fucking weirdo is chasing her. What the fuck would you do? What would you do? She's buzzing the intercom of her workplace and knocking really, really like loudly, just hoping that somebody answers the door before this fucking weirdo catches up with her. Finally, somebody lets her in, but this guy is like face to the window, grinning, smiling like an absolute weirdo. They obviously call the police. The police come, they arrest him. He's got a whole manner of items on him to suggest that Amy wasn't going to go home that night. He was arrested for stalking. He had photos of Amy since she was in high school. She says that she doesn't know this guy, so maybe he was a janitor, a teacher, just an absolute fucking weirdo. But Amy girl, I'm sorry this happened to you. If you've got a scary story that you want me to share, please DM me. But also, girls, don't walk home alone at night. And if you have to, stay on the phone with somebody, share your location, and walk the well-lit areas.
My high school friend, whom I haven't seen in years, suddenly waved at me as I was getting on the bus on my way home after work. But what the bus driver told me sent chills down my spine. Story time. So I have been friends with this girl since high school. But then, all of a sudden, I did not hear anything from her. I went to her house. She wasn't there. The neighbors didn't have any idea where they'd gone to. So I took it as they had to move, maybe because of an emergency. But then, on this particular night, as I was getting on the bus, which is my usual bus, and the bus driver actually knows me. He, picks me up all the time. So I waved at my friend. And I was surprised. I wanted to get off, but then it was very late and I couldn't actually afford to do that. Then as I went to sit down, the bus driver told me something very chilling. He said, "Why am I waving at something that isn't there?" I looked at him and I thought, what's he on about? And I said, this girl is my high school friend, someone that we went to high school together, and I've known her. And she was clearly there when she waved at me. He asked me this weird question. Did I see her shadow when she was standing there? I looked, and that is true. She didn't have a shadow. He then asked me, it is raining. She's not holding an umbrella. Why isn't she wet? That question hit me harder. As the bus driver was driving off, I begged him, I pleaded with him, and I said, what do I need to do? He told me that I must follow these rituals. And he gave me this weird looking candle. He said, I should make sure I lit this candle when I get home. But if the candle goes off on its own, that means the spirit has followed me back home. I was freaking out. He then went on to tell me that exactly midnight, I would hear 3 knocks on my door. No matter who it is, I should not open that door because it might not be what I think it is. I thanked the man and I went home. That night, I struggled to sleep, but eventually I fell asleep. Then I woke up and I lit the candles. Tell me why the candle went off on its own. Exactly midnight, I heard the 3 knocks on my door. I was scared, but then I dragged myself and I checked the peephole. I could see my best friend stood outside, and I'm thinking, why is she here at this time of the night? Then she shouted my name, asking me to open the door and let her in. I stepped back. I wanted to open the door for once because I thought it was truly my best friend. But then I remembered the advice this bus driver told me. So I listened and I did not open that door. I went back to my bed and I could not sleep. The next morning, first thing, I rang my best friend. She answered and I asked her, did she come to my house last night? She said, what are you on about? I was at home the whole of yesterday. I didn't go anywhere. I didn't go out. Then I knew this man truly saw a spirit and not my friend from high school. So I decided to go back to the bus station because I did not go to work that day. So I went back there to thank the man. When I got there and asked, I described the man. I told him the route, the time that he normally drives that bus. The guy told me that man, the bus driver, the same man that was talking to me, he died a couple of days ago. I was in shock. I didn't even know what to say, what to think. But guys, have you ever experienced anything funny like this? If you did, please, I'd like to hear your story. So drop it out in the comment section below. Wow, we live in a very spiritual world, people.
Spooky Scary Story Time is called Ghosts of the Ghost Town, and it was submitted by someone named Dan who said he wanted to share his experience visiting an abandoned canning town called Portlock, Alaska. It wasn't too far from where he grew up, and he grew up hearing stories about this place because the town itself had once been a bustling canning town. There was a tight-knit fisherman community, there was a busy cannery, and there was a post office. But by 1950, the post office had officially closed, and the reason was officially simple. Most people moved out because Alaska Route 1 highway was built, cutting off the need to visit this isolated part of the bay, and most people moved to the towns that popped up along the road for easier access to jobs and education and supplies. The reason this is spooky is because Dan says the old timers in his community told a different story about why this place was originally abandoned, and it wasn't because of the highway. He says that they would tell stories about old buildings and equipment that was left to rust in the elements because bodies started turning up, mutilated bodies. Some of these old timers say that the real reason that the people left was fear because they believed in the hairy men, and these were creatures that lived in the forest, and they would drag villagers from their towns into the forest, and they would leave behind these massive footprints that were humanoid and too big for any bear. Even creepier, Dan's own grandfather told him that the hairy men was just a name that these people gave to these creatures, but it was actually something much older that didn't even have a name, and these things learned how to mimic humans by wearing the skins and the voices of the dead. Dan says that if you ask some of the older people in the villages that surround this area, most people will pretend that they've never heard of this place or they just won't talk about it. But in college, Dan moved off of Alaska. He moved to the mainland, went to school, and in school on a holiday break, he decided he was going to bring his 2 best friends back to Alaska to visit his family and see the city where he grew up. One of Dan's best friends, we'll call Nick for the story, was interested in film, and he had recently purchased a drone, and he brought it to Alaska with him to get some footage of some places that would be inaccessible otherwise. And Dan is telling them the story of Portlock while they're there one night, and they're like, we should visit. Important thing to note here, Portlock is privately owned and it is considered trespassing to step foot on this part of the bay. However, Dan had an uncle who owned a transport boat. I'm not condoning these activities. I'm not telling you to go there. I don't think anybody should be trespassing on anybody's private property. Okay. Dan says, you know what, it's cool, I've always wanted to go, let's head out there. And they decided they were going to head out one night in the middle of winter, and he said it was freezing. It was the kind of cold that drains your camera batteries way faster than you plan for. But they get out there and they were shocked because there actually were abandoned, rotting buildings. There was the old schoolhouse, and they even found some cans and boots in the permafrost preserved from the 1940s and 50s that still looked brand new. And he said they were out there for about 3 hours getting ready to head back when they run into a group of older locals. And these were guys in like super heavy coats that just seemed to know the water in the woods. And this group of locals saw their lights and gear and came over to talk to them. And there was no small talk. These guys just approached them. One of the guys looks them square in the eye, and he doesn't smile or anything. And he's like, you boys are out here filming. He's like, you better pack it up and keep it moving. Like, oh yeah, thanks, we're getting ready to head back now. And the guy's like, all right, well, if you see anyone else, especially in these buildings, don't stop and talk to them, even if they ask you for help or even if they seem familiar. And the guys kind of just laugh it off because they're like, okay. And his friends just think that these guys are messing with what they perceive to be a group of outsiders. And so they're like, yeah, we're heading back right now. And another guy in the locals group pipes up and he looks at the tree line and sort of gestures toward it. And he says, some people stayed behind here when everybody else left, but those people aren't right. They wear skins of the dead. So they mimic voices real good and they might offer you a ride out, especially if you're cold, but it's important that you don't take that ride. He gets real serious and he says, I need you to listen to me because if you follow them out there, you will not come back or you won't come back the same. And then he just sort of encourages them to finish up what they're doing and head back. And then the group of locals quickly heads back to their skiff. Dan and his friends are like, that was creepy, and they're packing it up and they're getting ready to go. And then they remember the old post office, which is also supposedly right around that area. And so they're like, let's check that place out before we head back entirely. And they head to the post office. And as they approach the post office, they can see that it is still standing. It has some broken windows, but it's otherwise still intact. But as they get closer, they see that there is a man standing on the front steps outside the post office. And he waves to them. And after he waves, he calls out Dan's name. But his voice sounds garbled. And Dan's friends are like, do you know him? Dan's like, no, I've never been out here, and even though they planned to go in the post office, that was enough to freak them out. And so they turned around and they headed back toward Dan's uncle's boat. And as they did, they noticed large tracks in the snow that seemed big enough to be a bear's, but not quite the right shape. He did notice is that they were fresh and he hadn't seen any bears. On their way back to Dan's parents' house, their other friends started acting strange. And Dan and Nick hadn't really realized at this point that he had been quiet almost the entire trip. So they're like, hey, what's going on with you? And he's just like, nothing's wrong. But he won't talk. And they're like, what is going on with you? Like you're acting real weird. And he says, you guys are going to think I'm crazy. But back when we were talking to those locals, I swear I heard my brother's voice coming from the trees, but my brother passed. Dan and Nick, of course, knew about their friend's brother's passing a few years prior, but said that they couldn't tell if their friend was just messing with them, although admittedly he did say that he thought that that would be a pretty messed up thing to mess with them about. But after another moment of silence, their friend pipes up again, and he says that he told me to follow him into the woods and he would show me the easy way through the dark. I'll get back to Dan's parents' house and everybody's getting ready for bed, and Dan said that he was sleeping in the room that he grew up in and his friends were sleeping out in the living room. And just as he had settled into bed, he noticed that the light turned on in the hallway and his friend approached in the doorframe. And Dan could tell that it was their friend who had gotten quiet and spoken about his brother who had passed. And Dan's like, hey, what's up? And his friend's like, can I talk to you? Like, there's one other thing that I heard my brother's voice say from the trees and it's really freaking me out and I can't sleep. And Dan's like, yeah, what did he say? And he said that it's a lot warmer out here than I would think. His friend ended up changing his flight and flying back to his hometown early, and Dan and Nick spent the rest of the trip in Alaska without incident. They tried to reach out to their friend because he didn't really give them a reason other than saying he wanted to spend the rest of the holiday break with his family, but their messages would largely go unanswered. He put a lot of distance between himself and Dan and Nick, and they still are not as close of friends as they used to be. There would be 1-word or 2-word texts that he would respond, but eventually he just stopped responding to both of them altogether. And Dan says he does feel bad because he doesn't know if it was like their reaction to him when he brought up his brother who had passed, but he said, I don't think we reacted in a bad way. We were both just kind of like, are you sure that that's what you heard? Dan says he has tried to do more digging into Portlock, but can't really find much. There are a lot of people who claim to have seen Bigfoot out here, but he doesn't believe what the locals and the natives believe is Bigfoot. He doesn't think that that's what they mean by hairy men. And he said he's also asked his own mother, who's from a tribe that is indigenous to Alaska. She told him that she doesn't know much about it, but that she's heard rumors of experiments, whether these were private or government, we don't know. But these experiments were done on the wildlife in permafrost in the area and then covered up. She also told him that whatever is going on out there is something so terrible that he shouldn't even try to name it. So what do you all think? I am fascinated by this story. This was probably one of my favorites that I've told on Spooky Scary Storytime. So let me know what you think. And if you have a Spooky Scary Storytime that you think nobody would believe, please send it in. We would love to hear it.
Okay, this story is crazy. I'm also going to need your opinion on what you think was responsible for the end result of the story. So years ago, This woman, we're going to call her Amanda, said that she went to a swanky New Year's Eve gala. It was at an old stock trading building in her town. She said it was a gorgeous historical structure with Art Deco style lights and awesome tile. Amanda says that at the time she was very brokenhearted because she had recently broken up with a man that she thought was the one. She said that her parents thought that if she got real glammed up and went to this party that it would help cheer her up. She said the gala was absolutely amazing. It was glamorous and beautiful. There were flashy, glittery backdrops and tons of balloons up in the ceiling waiting for a balloon drop at midnight. Several bands were playing throughout the night and everyone was dressed to the nines. She said there was a fancy sit-down dinner, a gorgeous dessert bar, and chocolate fountains. All right, you get the picture. So she said shortly after dinner, she was introduced to a man a few years older than she was. So she describes him as not conventionally attractive, but she said he was intense and he seemed pretty intelligent. She said at first he was engaging with playful banter, and then that turned into him sort of close talking with her. And Amanda suggests to him that they go into the next room so that they can hear each other better. So the next room, as it was a large antique industrial sized kitchen. She said they stood there and talked for a few minutes and they were the only two in there. And at one point she hoisted herself up on a countertop to just sort of sit down while they chatted. She says, and that's when things got weird. So side note, she says that the guy who introduced her to this new man had been working with him and she knew that this guy had been working in insurance. But upon getting to know this new guy, he told her that he had a PhD in psychology. Okay, he also said that he had studied the brain extensively and that he was able to read people's minds. So of course she said, okay, read mine. So he tells her, hold out your hands and keep your palms up and close your eyes. So he positions himself in front of her with his hands hovering over hers, palms down. Amanda says that she suspected that he might try to kiss her, so she leaned back as far as she could with her shoulders and her head as she crisscrossed her legs in front of herself to sort of put that barrier between them. She said, I was up for being entertained and mildly flirted with, but I was not down for anything other than that. So she said he starts talking slowly and she can't even remember what. All she remembers was thinking to herself, he's going to bore me to sleep. She said he kept talking and talked some more, and nothing that was reading her mind, but she really was trying to remember exactly what he was saying so that she could go and tell her best friend the next day all about it. And then it gets really weird. She said all of a sudden she was overcome by the most overwhelming sense of grief in her chest, almost like how it would hit you, the emotion of finding out like a loved one passed away or something. She kind of holds her hand over her heart and she's trying not to cry, and he leans in and he shushes her and he says, don't let go of that feeling. And then she said he kept on talking to her in this really weird whispered voice, and he kept saying things to her that were very upsetting. And she goes, I could not then and I cannot now tell you what exactly he was even saying to me. She said, but I just knew that they were wrong and they were lies. And then all of a sudden, she hears the kitchen door swing open and she hears the sound of the party coming through. And at the same time, her father's voice yelling her name very sharply. And guys, she said she opened her eyes and she was in the corner of the kitchen with both of her shoes on the floor and one leg out of a window with her foot on the ledge. It was as though she were trying to slip out of the building from the window. And she said she looked over and this man was still over at the counter where she remembered being last. And he says to her father, oh yeah, she was feeling sad and she wanted to get some air, so she went to go sit out on the fire escape. And with that, he quickly scurried out of the kitchen. She says she was freaking out and terrified because the last thing she remembers, she was sitting on the countertop and she knows that that window was not open. And now all of a sudden she's hanging out of it. She kind of glances back down and it makes her feel sick because she said she's absolutely terrified of heights. Even going up a few floors in an elevator gives her extreme anxiety. There's just no way that she would voluntarily go out of a window like this. So she says she had been feeling a little bit woozy, and as soon as that man left, she started to feel a little bit better. She said she just had this deep knowing that she was in the presence of pure evil, and his absence was almost euphoric in that moment. So she says they exited the kitchen to head back to the table, or so she thought. But when she went out those doors, she realized the party was over. There were balloons scattered all over the floor, and waitresses and waiters quickly cleaning up glasses from the tables. She said people were heading out, and she was thinking to herself, how the heck was I gone and in that kitchen for over 3 hours? Her mother was full of questions, and her father just was like, we'll talk in the car. So they all said goodnight to the people still hanging around the table, and then they made their way out. When they got to the car, she did explain to her parents everything that she remembered from her perspective, and her father explained how he found her when he entered the kitchen. She says she recalls the moment when her and her father locked eyes in the rearview mirror, and he asked her, did that man tell you to jump? And then she ends it by saying, as the car pulled out of the parking lot, she glanced up at the still lit up 8th floor windows where the party was, and she noticed there were no fire escapes on that side of the building. Oh my goodness, what the heck was that? I have to know what your thoughts are on that. Like, what was up with that guy? What was he? Let me know in the comments. And if you have your own creepy story, I gotta hear it. And if you're new here, follow for more creepy story time.
Y'all, apparently I am a silver girly because these are the only gold earrings that I could fucking find. I'm lying. I do have these. I just bought them, but they don't go with what I'm wearing right now. So I'm sorry, but my earrings are gonna be boring, but the story, not boring. I mean, I do have orange earrings. No. So this girl says she knows that the story that she's about to share makes her sound crazy, but this actually happened. So this girl says that a few months ago, she spent some time in Baja, California, and she was living with a roommate. Her roommate was actually the one that told her about this job. She said that there are these people who needed a babysitter for 2 weeks for their dogs. She was gonna have to stay in their house, obviously, and just take care of the dogs, which seems simple enough, and obviously she needed the money. So the couple was actually going on vacation. She met up with them, and one of the dogs they had brought from the United States, and 2 other dogs they had rescued there in Mexico. Because the couple didn't speak Spanish, they had trained the dogs in English, and she also spoke English, so it was going to be a perfect fit. Both the front and the back of the house had yards where the dogs could go and play, and if you walk through the side of the house, you can end up in the front. She does say that the front wasn't very secure, but it did have a gate. So she ended up getting the job, and the couple went on their vacation. She explains that the dogs were really relaxed, but one of the ones that they had rescued from Mexico, he would always bark, and he was really bad with strangers, so it was the only dog that would really bark if somebody was passing by, or if there was a car passing by, or things like that, which wasn't that crazy in her opinion. So 2 nights before the couple actually came back from their vacation, she had already been there for almost 2 weeks, she was outside in the backyard talking to her dad, just, chit-chatting away, when she noticed that the dog, the one that was brought from the US, was staring at a wall and just barking at it. The dog went from barking to growling, like almost as if something was there that she just couldn't see. She didn't want to worry too much about it, so she ended up just getting all 3 of the dogs, putting them inside, and she was done with being outside for the night. So the reason why she even went to Baja California was because she was doing some kind of social service, so she did end up going to the social services the following day, and when she got back home, she ends up going to the couple's bedroom because that was the only bedroom that had an AC unit, and she was so tired that she just fell asleep. This is what she says happens, okay? So again, she's so tired, she went to bed. The dogs were in the room as well, and she gets awoken by voices. She immediately sits up, like almost like she got a jump scare moment, because she got so scared that maybe somebody had came into the house. However, none of the dogs were barking, and she knew that if somebody had came in, at least one of those dogs would be barking like crazy. She turns to look at the dogs, and they're all asleep in the bedroom with her, so she knows that maybe someone wasn't in the house and she was probably dreaming. When the dogs did wake up in the moment that she sat up as well, she says that the dogs didn't jump on the bed, didn't didn't come to like lick her the way they do when she wakes up every morning, that they just exited the room without barking, without doing anything strange, and that there was nothing weird inside the house either. So she just figured maybe she was dreaming, or maybe somebody was walking by and she heard them talking. She explains how the dogs went to the living room and everything seemed to be fine, but for some reason she couldn't shake this strange feeling that she had. So the last day that she was gonna have to spend in this house, she goes to bed and accidentally forgets to turn on the AC in the main bedroom. She ended up falling asleep listening to an audiobook. She ends up waking up again. It is 3 in the morning. She says that her head is underneath the blanket, and again she is hearing voices. By this point, when she wakes up, the audiobook had been done, so it wasn't even like going on in the background, and it wasn't the audiobook that was making these sounds. And this is what she hears when she's listening in on whoever is talking. "It's so hot in here. It's so hot in here. Do you think she could hear us? Is she listening to us? Is she awake? It's so hot in here. She's gonna wake up. She didn't turn on the AC. She's gonna wake up. She's gonna wake up. Is she listening to us? Is she awake? It's so hot in here. It's so hot in here." Now she says that when she's listening to the voices, it's not a one by one saying something. It is about 3 voices all talking at the same time saying, "Is she awake? It's hot in here. Is she awake?" Like all at the same time she could hear them. She said that it even felt like if some of the voices were just repeating what the other voice was saying. However, she is awake now and she's fully hearing all of these voices, and they are in the bedroom with her. Again, she knows the dogs are in the bedroom with her. She knows that somebody could not have gotten into the house because the dog would have been barking. She said that she felt crazy, but the only thing that she could think about was that she believed that the voices were coming from the dogs. Now at this point she's like, what is gonna happen? What do I do? Do they know I'm awake? I don't want them to know that I'm awake. I want them to think that I have no idea that they are the ones talking. She was like, it is 3 dogs against me, and even if she managed to run past them, get out of there, it was gonna be a long hallway for either the front of the door or the back of the door. There was no way she was gonna get out of that bedroom without the dogs noticing, following, or catching her. And what the fuck was gonna happen? Because she had, obviously the dogs are talking. What else could they possibly do? She didn't know what to do, but she also didn't want the dogs to know that she was awake. So she stayed there very still for a little bit, and then she kind of made a move, like almost like she is waking up. Like she didn't just hear y'all talking. This is her waking up, and we don't know that you can talk. She ends up sitting up on the bed like, oh, just woke up, cleaning the eye boogers off her eyes. She says that she turned the lamp on and that she turned the AC on. I would have too, because obviously that's what they fucking wanted. And then she starts talking to the dogs and she's like, "Oh, it's so hot in here, guys. Do you guys want to jump on the bed with me? Come on over and go to sleep with me on the bed." Bitch, if that was me, oh, let me turn the AC on. Oh, guys, I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Do not move. It's hot out here. It's hot in the hallway. Stay in the room. Let me close the door behind me. So again, she's like, come on, get on the bed. I missed you guys. Bitch, that was a little too much. That was a little too sus. That's probably how they fucking knew. Now, instead of the dogs jumping on the bed like they had been doing, the past few days that she's been there, they all walked to the complete opposite corner of the bedroom from where she was. She says that they go to the corner. One of them's looking at her, but she notices that the other one is almost looking like towards the bottom of the bed, and that at some point they all kind of look like they're smiling, but in reality they're showing her their canines, okay? They're showing her like, bitch, if we wanted to, we could. Okay, I added that. But you know what I mean. At this point, she was fucking dying on the inside. She was terrified, but she had to act like, nothing is wrong here. They're not acting fucking weird. So what she did is she turned around, she faced the back towards them, she laid down, and she said that she even tried to call a friend, but the friend did not answer the phone. It was like the most terrifying night that she had ever encountered. She did manage to go to sleep after that, and when she woke up, dogs were acting like if nothing happened. Like, they didn't fucking show her their canines. Like, if they weren't talking in that bedroom. These motherfuckers, okay? These motherfuckers hopped on the bed with her when she woke up, playing, licking her face. Nothing happened. She ends up leaving that house without even waiting for the couple to come back. They're gonna come back that night. It's fine. The dogs are good. They can talk. They can order food. They can get some DoorDash. It's good. It's okay. It's fine. She never asked about the dogs. She didn't want to know anything. She didn't want to work there again. But she now doesn't think that it was the dogs. And I don't believe the following, but this is what her aunt tells her. Her aunt tells her that she believes that it was actually duendes, and and not the dogs talking. In my opinion, if it wasn't the dog, if it wasn't the dogs talking, why were they acting weird? But then again, one of the dogs was looking underneath that bed. Okay, don't listen to me. I don't know. You form your own opinion. Either way, I wouldn't have wanted to experience duendes or talking dogs. Actually, talking dogs maybe, because like how fun would that be? But only if they were not scary the way they were fucking looking. The reason why she does believe that her aunt and the duende story is because she, even though she experienced that, she still felt very safe with the dogs the following day. Even though she didn't want to know anything about what the fuck happened, she never felt unsafe other than when they were like looking under the bed or like acting really weird and shit like that. She feels like she's always going to be thinking about that moment and just thinking what it could have been. But what do you guys think happened? Was it the dogs, or was it duendes, or was it both? Let me know in the comments.
Okay, I have a spooky story. I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts, and I will tag everything, put everything in the description. But this podcast says true scary stories, and the actual person that this happened to is the one telling the story. So this grown man is talking about when he was 12 years old. He went to his grandma's house, living his best life, goes into her room. He was looking for a nail clipper. Looks down, looks up, and sees there's a wall there, of course, and there's a painting hanging on that wall. Now, he says that he had never seen this painting before. He's 12 years old. He's gone to his grandma's house many, many times, and he somehow never noticed that this painting was there. So he goes and he tells his grandma, and he's like, "Hey, grandma, I noticed this new painting. Did you just get it? Has it always been there? Who is this woman painted on this canvas?" And his grandma says, "That's actually me when I was younger. Your great-granddad gifted this to me for my quinceañera." Omar goes back, looks at the painting, and is like, "Oh my gosh, this is my grandma when she was young." He's just admiring the painting. That night, his grandma's outside. He is just wandering around the house, and he hears something or someone crying. And he's like, goes and checks on grandma. Grandma's gardening outside. Comes back inside the house, and he still hears whatever this is weeping. He looks around, and he kind of puts his ear by her bedroom door, and it's definitely coming from her room. He opens the door, he checks, and it immediately stops. He looks at the picture, and now he feels like this woman, his grandma essentially, is staring right at him now. And he freaks out. He runs out of the room. He doesn't say anything, just tries to block it. The next day, he tells his grandma, "Hey, this is what happened. I heard some crying. Went inside your room. It was coming from your room. And I don't know. I feel weird. This painting is scaring me." Grandma pulls it out, doesn't think twice, and puts it in the backyard. Same day, neighbor comes knocking on the door and is like, "Hey, are you okay?" And Omar's grandma is like, "Yeah, what do you mean?" And she's like, "Well, I was outside doing laundry and I hear some crying coming from your backyard. I was just making sure that you were okay. It sounded like a woman." And his grandma is like, "No, it's not me." That same night, Omar is asleep with his uncle, and he goes outside because they have an outhouse. The restroom is outside. He goes outside because he has to use the restroom. He wakes his uncle up and is like, "Hey, can you come with me outside?" They both go outside, and as his uncle is waiting for him to finish using the restroom, he also hears weeping coming from the backyard. That next morning, they tell grandma, and grandma is like, okay. She grabs the painting and she starts praying over it. As she's praying, she's reading the Bible. The weeping starts again, and it's coming from this painting. It's getting louder and it's getting louder, and grandma is just telling them, "Ignore it, let me finish." She finishes it. She wraps it in plastic and she puts it at the very end of the backyard. She never wanted to talk about it again. He always asked, and she never wanted to say anything about this. Maud is a grown man now, and he has questions, because to this day he will ask his grandma about that night. She won't answer anything, and now he has questions. He's like, why does she know what to do? Why was she so nonchalant about whatever happened that day? And why does she not want to talk about it? He has his own speculation, and he thinks that maybe back in the day his grandma used to be some sort of witch or something. Maybe the painter knew them and somehow added some negativity into the painting. He doesn't really know, but he does speculate. But what do you guys think? I heard this story again on this podcast, and I was like, oh, hell no. And it's scary because the person on the painting is his grandma. So thank you guys for listening to this spooky story. If you guys have any stories that you'd like for me to read, please send them via DM or email because I'd love to read them. And I will see you guys in the next spooky story. Bye.
This guy accidentally married a marine spirit because that can happen apparently, and there are consequences. I am back with another spooky story, and this one is a submission from South Africa. We're gonna call the person who submitted the story Shabby. So this is the story of one of Sabi's patients. Sabi himself is a spiritual healer. So we're gonna call the patient Tabo. Tabo has been one of Shabby's longest patients, and in order to align with his ancestors, Shabby was instructed to frequently take Tabo up to the mountains in the river to perform certain rituals that would connect him to his ancestors. So everything was coming along fine. And he used to have dreams of his water guides giving him instructions. Now, Tabo would tell Shabby the instructions that he dreamt, and basically Shabby would do as told. However, Shabby would filter out certain things because Shabby knew that there were other spirits that would try to hijack the process and pretend to be his ancestors. Shabby told him about this. For instance, Tabo once dreamt of an old woman with long hair at the riverbank. This woman would never look at him in the face and would always turn her back on him, and he would hear her voice. She had long hair, smooth skin, and would always sit by the riverbank. So one day, she instructed Tabo to bring a black chicken, red wool, and basically gave him instructions on what to do. And when Tabo told Shabby this, Shabby instantly had doubts. Shabby told him, let's delay this. But Tabo became so impatient since the woman showed him visions of wealth and success. Tabo could not wait, so one day he decides to consult a different Sangoma. And the traditional healer told him that he would be able to do everything for him for just 400 rands. So now they went to the river and performed the ritual. After the ritual, he went home to sleep. At around midnight, he heard a voice calling him to the same river. He explained it as a smooth, calming voice, more seductive, and he definitely couldn't resist. When he got to the river, he met a beautiful lady who was semi-unclothed. She was bare-breasted and had an ancestral cloth around her waist. She told him to come bathe with her in the reeds, and after that, the woman disappeared, and then he fell asleep at the river. A few hours passed, and he woke up when people started coming to the river around 5 a.m. When he woke up near where he was sleeping, he found a beautiful ring with a gemstone. It was a blue gemstone that had a shade of red. And Tabo was thinking that this ring was from his ancestors, so he put it on his ring finger. Maybe he shouldn't have done that. After he did that, an influx of memories came rushing in. He remembered that while they were in the river, it was like a wedding. There were drums, feasts, and he remembers putting a similar ring on a woman. It was also this alien-looking figure with sharp teeth who was conducting the wedding ceremony. He had a robe made from seashells, bones, shark teeth, and crocodile teeth. Well, later that day when he got home, his fiance called out of nowhere and broke things off with him. And up until now, he cannot be in a relationship with anyone. And twice a month, while he's asleep, he feels himself being intimate with someone who is slimy. He cannot wear long trousers. Whether it's winter or summer, he has to wear shorts since the woman that he's married to loves his legs and wants them exposed at all times. He also dreams of kids calling him Papa. If he ever tries to become intimate with any other woman, his manhood becomes soft. Yet, when he is intimate with the woman, well, the spirit, he says it is the best schmex that he ever had. And Shabby says that even when he checks his bones to consult him, Tabo appears every time as a married man with kids. South Africa is no joke when it comes to these spooky stories.
This girl emailed me and said that there was a jinn attached to her neighbor in Saudi Arabia and eventually took the lives of one of her family members. We're going to call this girl Ashley. So when Ashley was 10 years old, she had a neighbor move in next door, and we're going to call this neighbor Sarah. Sarah was in her late 20s and had just gotten married to an older man. Sarah had just given birth to a baby boy, and Ashley's mom kind of befriended Sarah and was kind of like a big sister to her. Now, Ashley's housemaid, whose name was Sue, befriended Sarah's housemaid, whose name was Jenny. Sarah spent most of her time alone because her husband was away most of the time, but there was one thing that she really liked to do. Every Sunday, she would dress up, put on music, make Arabic coffee, and burn Arabic incense. Almost like she had guests over, except for she was always alone. Well, on one occasion, Sarah had to go visit family for a few days, and she had left her housemaid Jenny at home. So one day, Jenny's home alone. She's just chilling, doing what maids do, I guess, and the doorbell rings. So Jenny goes over to the door and she opens it. She thinks that it's Sarah's husband at this point. She opens it. It is not. It was a man, except for this person did not look like a man. He had on traditional Saudi clothing. So So he's wearing a sobe, which is like a traditional dress for men, and then he's wearing a shamag, which is something that they put on their head. You've probably seen it before. The thing is, his skin was so clear, it was almost like he had no veins, but the most chilling part was that he had red eyes. So she's just staring at him like, what the hell is this? She's terrified, and he's looking right back at her, and he's just staring at her. And then he says, where's Sarah? It has been days. I miss the smell of coffee and incense. Tell her to come home. The tone was not that of one who was asking. He was demanding. Jenny's just staring at him, terrified. She didn't utter a word. She didn't know what to say. And while she's sitting there stunned, he just grabs her by the arm, squeezes, and she faints, falls to the floor. So Jenny wakes up later on. He's not there anymore. And the first thing she does is she looks at her arm, and there are red marks on her arm where this thing had grabbed her. So of course, when Sarah came home, Jenny was like, look, this man came to the door when you were gone. He had red eyes. He had no veins on his face, and he was demanding that you come home. He was saying that he was missing the smell of incense and coffee, and then he grabbed me and I fainted. And Sarah just looks at her and is completely unfazed. Almost like what happened was normal to her. But that wouldn't be the end of it. So a little bit later on, Ashley and her family decide that they're going to go on a vacation. And so Ashley's mom lets her maid, Sue, stay over at Jenny's house, so Sarah's. Well, they go on vacation, they come back, and Sue comes back home, and Sue is like, tells Ashley's mom, like, look, don't ever let me go back there ever again. There's something that is there. There's a man that's there. I saw him everywhere. She said that the maid, or the other maid, Jenny, and Sue, who was over at her house, they would sleep on the couch downstairs because they were so scared, because apparently upstairs where Sarah was is where they would either see or feel this presence all the time. So I can only imagine how Jenny is feeling living there now. Now, Ashley said that when she was little, she remembers going over to Sarah's house with her mom, and she said that the house just had the strangest feeling, and she still remembers that specific feeling to this day. She said that Sarah would also just happen to know things that was going on in other people's lives, like their neighbors, their other neighbors. Very private things that she would only know if she was there with them. She even said that she knew things that happened in Ashley's home that Ashley's mother never told Sarah about. Now, for the next part, I am going to give a trigger warning, because if you are sensitive to babies passing, I mean, I know I just said it, but like, how else can I explain it? You might want to scroll. So the baby she doesn't explain how it passes, but this goes on for a year, and eventually Sarah's baby passes away. He got sick out of nowhere, and he passed away from his illness, and Ashley's mom and her always believed that this had to do with whatever that thing was, which they believe is a jinn. After this, Sarah ended up moving away, and they believe that this thing was attached to Sarah for obvious reasons, but also because when she moved away, another family moved into that house, and that family is doing fine. Nothing has happened to that family at all. So whatever this was somehow attached to Sarah, and they don't really know what it was, or why it was attached to her, or why it inevitably ended up taking her baby, or maybe it didn't. What do you guys think? Do you think it ended up taking her baby? Do you think this was a jinn? Why do you think it was attached to Sarah? And do you think Sarah was good? I don't really get the feeling she was, and the reason why is because when her maid was harmed, she didn't care, and I would care. That would bother me, because you have to care about them. If they're living in your house, they're doing things for you every day. Like, I would care about someone who is doing stuff for me, waiting on me hand and foot every day, you know? Like, that's wrong not to care and not to be fazed by that. So I don't know if Sarah was a good person, but maybe I'm wrong. Also, maybe someone from Saudi Arabia can step in here and tell us whether you think this was a jinn or not. If not, what you think it was. And if you do you think it took their baby? You know, same questions that I asked everybody else. I don't know. There's so many unanswered questions here. I'd love to know where Sarah was today. I would also love to know, one question I have is, how is Sarah doing after her baby passed, right? So lots of unanswered questions. Drop them, any comments, suggestions, questions that you have below. And I know a lot of the questions can't really be answered, but some of them might be able to. But yeah, as always, please be respectful.
Part 3, where we left off, lady in an Airbnb. That was part 1. She was scared by all the locked doors inside, and she wondered what they could be, and then the door opened on its own, and she followed the creature inside. Then, 4 friends are having a vacation together. They're seeing things on the hills. They're waiting for their friend to come and join them, who's just been at an Airbnb. Now, they're really petrified because there's handprints and footprints in the mud around the property. So they've decided that they're going to go into town and try and find psychic to find out what's going on. Riley was the only one willing to join me on this psychic search. Mateo and Harper stayed behind. It's a gay couple and a lesbian couple. Mateo and Evan, who's our narrator, and Harper and Riley. Mateo and Harper stayed behind in case Helen arrived. Their loyalty to her triumphed over their fear of whatever had been stalking us. Riley wasn't too bothered either way. We pulled the front door to and started making our way into town. Shoot, I forgot my phone! Riley said a little while later. I'll be right back. She turned away from me and started walking back in the direction of the house. What? I said, you can't just leave me here. The coyotes. Oh, and the stalker. Riley rolled her eyes. I won't be long. She jogged off and I gulped. I sat down on a rock and waited for her to return. As I waited, my mind turned to Helen. The more I thought about her, the more I knew that something was wrong. Helen never didn't answer the phone. She'd always update us, especially when she knew that we'd be worried about her. Hey! Riley jumped up behind me. Got it. Come on, let's go. It must have been about 8 p.m. when we finally arrived outside the psychic's place. I say place because to describe it as a house would be like calling a tomato a fruit. Strictly true, but it's not really, is it? An oversized shed, maybe? That might be a stretch, but that's what I'll call it. It lay on the outskirts of the tiny village. The shed had holes where we supposed windows should have been, the curtains being the only thing separating the indoors from the outdoors. The door to the shack was utterly uninviting. Before I could even begin to think of a plan, Riley was knocking with the force of a battering ram. After a few minutes of waiting, we decide the shed is probably uninhabited. Riley tries the door handle anyway. It turns and then a click. Riley pushes the door open. It opens one creak at a time, revealing an older bearded man, maybe in his 80s, slouched on a sofa, asleep. Empty beer bottle stood at his feet, defeated. The first thing that struck me was his height. He was tall, no doubt about it, and his hands and bare feet were caked in dirt. Poke him, Riley suggested. I think he deserves a little bit more dignity than that. I snapped back. I lean closer to him and say, excuse, and then the man begins to scream. I scream, Riley screams louder. He grabs me by the wrist, mumbling, and then, who are you? I have a weapon on my person. My brain is capable of great harm. I knew I had to defuse the situation. We mean no harm, psychic. We come only to seek help. Tell me this instant, he managed to say, before I sober up. I explained what had happened in the desert. The tall figure, the foot and the handprints, and how Helen hadn't met us yet. Where was she? The old man went very, very still. Not the theatrical stillness from before, not the drunk swaying nonsense. This was different. His grip on my wrist twisted just enough to hurt. Say your name again, he said. Helen, I replied, frowning. A friend. She meant to meet us. His eyes snapped fully open, clear, terrified. She came here, he said. The words landed like something physical. What? Riley laughed, but it was thinner now. No, she didn't. She came here, he repeated. Yesterday, near sunset. His eyes flicked between us. Blonde, about your height. He nodded at me. My throat tightened. What did she want? I asked. The old man slowly released my wrist and leaned back, like even remembering it exhausted him. She asked about the house, the one on the slope, glass walls, watching the valley. My stomach dropped. What did you tell her? Riley asked. I told her not to stay there. Silence. Riley scoffed again, but weaker. Okay, and I'm guessing what, she didn't listen? The old man shook his head. She didn't understand. None of you ever understand. A pause. Then he leaned forward again, lowering his voice. That land doesn't belong to the people. I felt that sentence more than I heard it. It used to, he continued. A long time ago, before the fires, before the roads, there were stories about these things. They walk on all fours. They don't like being seen, but they like to look. So they hide in plain sight. Ugh. A cold prickle spread across my skin. From the trees, he went on. From the dark. From the high ground. Always watching down. Mateo's words echoed in my head. There was someone standing up near the tree line. I swallowed. The footprints. The old man nodded. They come close when they're curious. And then what? Riley asked. He looked at her. Then they try to come inside. No one spoke. Even Riley didn't have anything for that. I forced myself to keep going. Helen, what happened to her? The old man hesitated. That was worse than anything he'd said so far. She didn't believe me, he said finally. Same as you. She laughed. His eyes flicked to Riley for a second. Said she'd stayed somewhere strange the night before, at her house or something. Said it felt wrong. Said there were doors inside that shouldn't have been there. The Airbnb. She said she heard something in the wall, something moving. They're everywhere. In some places they even have tunnels connecting houses to each other, letting them crawl around completely unseen. Oh my God. My chest tightened. And, I whispered, she said it followed her. I should imagine now she's not herself. Your friend is as good as dead. A skin coat, that's all. protecting that beast from being seen by any of you. As soon as it shreds her skin, it'll fall to the ground like offal, like tripe. Then it'll find a new host. So be careful. I'd get an Uber back to that glass house of yours if I were you. I realised I'd never told him where we were from or where we were staying. My hands were shaking and my heart was racing. What the? Riley shouted as she dragged me along straight to the trail which led to the desert and the glass house. Riley, the guy said we should get an Uber back there, and I think he's right. We get an Uber back, go and pack, go straight to the nearest police station. Small towns like these, they're all in on it together. I bet this town is riddled with nut jobs and crazies. I'm not getting in a car with any of them. We hiked up the path, getting closer and closer to the house, and I noticed something. A mound in the desert. I noticed it because it didn't look like a rock or a tree. It looked like a huge blanket. It had folds in it and creases. It was red and brown, tonal colours. I put my hand on Riley's arm. "Wait here," I murmured, transfixed on the thing in front of me. I stepped closer and closer until I vomited on my shoes. Retched over and over again every time I closed my eyes, seeing the unbelievable thing that I was witnessing in front of me. Helen. Or what was left of her. Jumble of skin, an eye here, a nose there. I don't even want to think about what some of the other holes and nodules were. I turned to Riley, waiting on the path for me. She looked terrified. "Riley, call now. I don't have my phone. What is it, Evan?" Riley shouted from where I'd left her. "What do you mean you don't have a phone?" I said. "You went back to the house for it." That's when I noticed the stains on her jean shorts. Red, bloody, and lots of it. When my eyes found Riley's face again, she no longer looked scared. She was wearing a smile that reached her eyes, and she began to walk towards me. The end.
My best friend not only betrayed me, she also used brujeria in order to take my husband away. Story time. This story did not happen to me, but I'm going to go ahead and tell it in the first person. The person who did submit it wants to be anonymous. This one's a bit heavy, so just trigger warning. I had just recently had a miscarriage when this all started. Right after my miscarriage, I decided that I wanted to join a gym in order to find myself again and heal, not just mentally, but like physically as well. My husband, Alex, being the supportive husband that he is, decided to go along with me. That's when we ran into one of my old friends from high school named Brianna. Now, I had not seen her in years. As it turns out, she worked at the gym. At first, everything felt normal, but the moment she met Alex, I noticed something. She was a little too friendly. She was smiling a little too much, laughing at everything he said, giving him a little bit too much attention. Trust your instincts. I brushed it up and told myself that maybe I was just being insecure after everything that I had been through. Now, fast forward a couple weeks of us going to the gym, Brianna offered to help us both with workout plans and meal ideas. She started texting both of us at first. It was a group chat. She would do check-in. She was being super helpful, but slowly that changed. She stopped texting both of us and started to message Alex separately. Her excuse was that she was trying to give him a more detailed plan because his workout goals or his fitness goals were different than mine. As more time went on, I noticed that these text messages were coming in pretty late at night, and then Alex started to act really different. He was always on his phone. He would turn the screen away from me anytime I would look. That's when I knew at the pit of my stomach that something was not right. So one day I decided to follow him. He told me that he was going to be working late. So I went ahead and I drove to his job and parked about a block away and just waited. That's when I saw Brianna's car pull up. A few minutes later, I saw when they both drove away in his car, leaving her car parked in the parking lot of his job. I decided to continue to follow them. That's when I watched them pull into a hotel, the same hotel that Alex and I used to go to when we first started dating. In that moment, my heart completely dropped, like it was confirmed that they in fact did have something. I went ahead and took photos of them walking into the hotel and decided to leave, that I wasn't going to confront it. I wasn't going to involve myself in any sort of altercation, that I was just going to go home, pack my things, and go to my mom's house. But before I got to the house to pack my things, I sent the photos that I had taken of Alex and Brianna to Alex's phone, and he immediately started to freak out. He started calling me nonstop, text messaging me, begging me for forgiveness, saying that it was a mistake, that it wasn't what I thought. I ignored every single message, and I was done. I'm gonna go ahead and do a part 2, which will be up right after this one. My best friend not only betrayed me, but she took my husband away with brujeria. Story time, this is part 2. So after I took photos of Alex and Brianna going into the hotel together and I sent them to Alex, he started calling me and texting me nonstop, begging me for forgiveness, but I was done. I packed my things and I moved in with my mom. Now fast forward to a few days later, there was another girl that also worked at the gym. Her name is Nancy. Her and I also became pretty good friends, and out of nowhere she messaged me asking if she could speak with me. I was confused, but I agreed. When she called me, she told me that she couldn't stay quiet any longer, that she needed to tell me what was really going on with Brianna. She told me that before all of this, Brianna had gone to a woman who practices brujeria. Apparently the moment Brianna met my husband, she was like
head over heels in love with him and wanted him. Like, she was obsessed with him. She brought pictures of me and Alex and asked for the bruja to do something to break us apart so that she could have him. She said that Brianna had even talked about it at work like it was some sort of joke. But when things started to happen, just like Brianna said that they would, like, Nancy got scared. That's when Nancy finally decided to speak up, because even though she wasn't connected to the whole brujeria situation, she felt guilty because she knew about it and just didn't take Brianna seriously. Honestly, didn't want to believe it at first, but after I told my mom what happened, she urged me to go seek the help of a bruja and to figure out what was going on. So we went to this woman who asked me to bring photos of me and Alex and a photo of Brianna as well. When we got to the woman's house, she placed the photos on a table and said a few things under her breath, and then she grabbed Brianna's picture and started cutting it into pieces slowly right in front of me. She said that she was breaking whatever had been done and sending everything back. Not long after that, things changed, like practically overnight. Out of nowhere, Nancy texted me one night and told me that Alex had showed up at the gym and made a big scene yelling at Brianna and telling her that he wanted nothing to do with her anymore, that he wanted her out of his life. It was like something in his head had snapped. After that, it was almost like Brianna's life completely spiraled out of control. She ended up getting fired from the gym and her reputation began to decline quickly. People distanced themselves. She started drinking heavily, getting into arguments, and isolating herself from everyone around her. According to Nancy, one night Brianna left the bar extremely intoxicated. She was walking alone, disoriented, not paying attention to her surroundings. She ended up getting hit by a car. To this day, no one knows who hit her, but the impact was fatal. And as for me, I made a decision. I decided that I was not going to get back with Alex. Even though what broke us up was brujeria, I knew in my heart that there's no way that I was ever going to be able to trust him again. Honestly, it didn't matter how much he apologized or how many times he begged to come back. Like, I just couldn't do it. It's been 10 years since all of this happened, and I've since remarried and moved on with my life. But even now, every so often, I still get messages from Alex saying that he still loves me and asking me to leave my husband for him. I never respond. My main goal with sharing all of these brujeria stories is to bring awareness to the fact that this stuff is very real and it has serious consequences. Do not mess around with brujeria, because you will pay the price, especially when you break up a happy home just because of, I don't know, there's so many men in the world. Why go after a married one? I don't understand.
Snacks in hand, the vibe is set, and once I start, don't eat too much because you gotta stay fine. But come on, bestie, yeah. Hey, bestie, I missed you. You want to go get your snack? And for the others, don't forget the rolling equipment. So before I tell the story, it has come to my attention that you guys think I'm making up the stories about my ebook for sales. And I kind of like had a feeling that was going to happen, because that's why. And like some of my videos, I'll show like the screenshot of the person actually writing to me the review. I do it once in a blue moon, because nobody about to do that every time. But if you think I'm making this up or my stories are fake, why don't you get it for yourself and find out? I can promise you'll find yourself writing me a review. Anyway, let's get to the story. And guess what? It's a review. But this one actually kind of like threw me for a loop. Anyway, let's get on with it. So for the sake of the story, let's call this girl Nadia. So Nadia is a TikTok witch. And I say TikTok witch because most of the information that she learned was from TikTok, which isn't bad all the time, because if you follow me, then you know you're getting good information. However, it opens you to the possibility of getting a lot of wrong information too. And that's what happened to her. So Nadia she wasn't religious. Like, growing up was very hard. She kind of went from foster homes to foster homes. And so like, stability wasn't a thing for her, so she didn't have religion. Like, she didn't grow up around any kind of religion, but her soul was craving something, right? And so she started seeing a lot of like spirituality stuff on TikTok, like witchcraft and all of that, and she got really into it. And it got to the point where she felt like she was actually like a really good witch. And upon her research stuff on TikTok, she found my page, and she's been following me for the past 2 years. She loves my stories. She enjoys a lot of the information that I give you guys. But remember, she's not religious or nothing like that. So boom, upon me first dropping the book last year, she bought the book thinking it was gonna help her with her witchcraft, which a lot of people do. A lot of y'all think that my book is gonna help you learn how to do spells or whatever, when that is far from the case. So she bought the book, saw the book, was kind of disappointed because she thought she was gonna learn some spells and shit, but it's prayers in there. So she was like, whatever, I just lost that money, whatever. But at least I have the book. It's a good information in there, but I'm not interested in all that praying stuff. Which is even more wrong, because it's like, even the good witches pray to God, I mean. Not the witches that do witchcraft for like bad, but the ones that do it for healing. Anyway, she got the book. She wasn't really interested. It was just on her phone. Fast forward, she meets this guy, right? And he's also a witch. And they like, they're into spirituality and stuff like that. Except this guy is actually Caribbean, so he knows his shit. And so she started learning from him a lot. However, he was limiting what he was teaching her, and she ends up finding this out later. Anyway, we're together for a total of 4 months, and within those 4 months, Nadia became skin and bones. You would think she was sick. She's so fucking stressed out. This man is stressing her the fuck out, but she can't leave him. She finds herself blocking him in the morning and end up in his bed the same night. And sometimes she don't even remember how she got there. If you know, you know. Again, she's following me, so she knows about like love spells and stuff like that. But she never thought that he would do a love spell on her. However, one day she saw me doing a story time about one of the reviews in my ebook. And as I was talking, a lot of the things that the person from that story was saying they were going through, she can relate to. So she's like, let me go look at that book again. And she went back to the book because I have like a list of like things that points that you might need a spiritual cleanse. Like if you're waking up at 3 a.m, I have a whole list of things. Like if you can check these off, yeah, you need to cleanse. So now she's reading this book a year later. Mind you, she got that book before she even met him, so he doesn't know that she has this book. And so she rereads the book, and she's not stupid either, you know? So she's like, oh shit, I think this nigga got me under, yeah. Like she suspected it before, but when she like reread the book, she was like, oh shit, like yeah, that might be me. And she desperately wants to leave this man because she really genuinely don't want to be with him, but she can't. So she's like, I don't do the whole prayer stuff, but if it works, it works. The worst that could happen is it doesn't work. And so she decided to do the fast. So day 1 of the fast, right? Everything is going well. But guess who shows up at her door? It's him. Now, this is not a not normal thing, but she didn't tell him that she was fasting. She was doing it behind his back. So he showed up to the door, and the first thing he says to her is, why are you fasting? So she's like, how the fuck did you know I was fasting? I didn't tell you shit. And so he starts accusing her of meeting somebody else. He starts cursing her out like, who's the nigga that's telling you gotta fast? You got a nigga in here. You've been changing on me lately. So she's listening to all this. She's like, oh, I'm one of the reviews. This shit is working. Because mind you, this is the first day of the fast. Usually shit go down like the 3rd day in the reviews, but this is the first day. So he's like blowing up everywhere, accusing her. And she's asking him to leave, but he refuses to leave. Now, part of my fast is journaling, right? And so he saw the journal that she was doing. And so he decided to grab the journal and look inside. And he saw like the prayers and stuff. And he looked at her like, since when do you pray? You think God is going to protect you? You think God is going to protect you from me? You don't even know. You don't even know God. He ain't going to protect you. Long story short, she ended up having to call the cops to get him out. But if anything, that was more confirmation that she should keep doing this fast. Oh, my bad, y'all. I done took a nap, but I'm up now. Anyway, so after she called the police and she got him out the house, she said she felt something in her spirit shifting. Well, not shifting, like it shifted. Not too much and not too instantly either, but the feeling was enough for her to notice. If you think about it, for the first time in about 4 months, she stood up for herself for the first time and it felt great. And guess what? She was able to sleep through the night that night. Usually, if she's by herself, she can't really sleep unless he's there with her. No nightmares, no random urge to text them, no weird heavy feeling on her chest that she can't understand. Just quiet, and that sleep felt like she hadn't slept in years. Anyway, so the next morning, she wakes up to 17 missed calls from this man. Some from his phone and some from other phone numbers. She is absolutely like baffled but amazed at the same time that this shit has actually happened. And she's like, yo, I'm really one of those story times. And she was thinking like, that's crazy how y'all all think the same thing. She's thinking like, yo, I can't wait to tell Blizzy this shit. He ignored it all though. Day 2, she did the fast. And day 3, the night of day 3, of course, she has a dream. Just like all the other people. Well, not everybody has a dream on the 3rd day. I think it really depends on your situation. By the way, I do see your comments about everybody that's like from Ghana, Nigeria, international that wants to get the book, but it's too expensive. Pray you see this, but since Friday is Good Friday, on Friday, from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m., the book is going on sale for 10 American buckaroos. $10 and $10 only, but it's only going to be for 3 hours. But let me get back to the story because I'm getting off topic. Anyway, so that night, she goes to sleep. She has a very interesting dream. So, she's in a kitchen. This kitchen is like dark, so she's standing in this dark, creepy looking ass chicken. Did I say chicken? I meant to say kitchen. And she turns to the stove. She noticed there's a pot on the stove, and the stove is on, so there must be something in the pot. So she gets closer. She sees inside the pot a necklace, and it's not just any necklace. It's a necklace that he bought her. Got it for her during like the 2nd month of their relationship. Absolutely loves that necklace. It was a very thoughtful gift, and she wears it because that necklace has a picture of her grandma who had passed away in there. So she sees the necklace boiling in the pot. So her first thought, because she genuinely loves this necklace, is to try and save the necklace. So she's like, oh my God, my necklace is getting destroyed. She's about to try to reach for the stove to turn it off. Somebody slaps her hand and she turns, and there's this lady standing there now in the room with her. The lady literally looks at her and says to her, stop wearing what was made to hold you. And then she woke up. Again, remember how I said she wears this necklace every day? Y'all, why did she wake up? The necklace was still on her neck, but it was broken, like someone broke it. Immediately, she put 2 and 2 together. She's like, the necklace! My grandma! She instantly broke down. She said she cried for 3 freaking hours straight, nonstop. It's not that she didn't want to cry. She very much was tired of crying, but she couldn't. She just kept crying. The thing is, it felt good. It felt really good. It felt like, as much as he wanted to stop crying, because why the hell am I crying so much? It felt so good. So when she finally was able to stop, she decided to get rid of everything in that house that has anything to do with him. She started cleaning. And I had made a video back then too that she had saw. She said she literally went through my page searching for the video, because it's a very old video, where I taught you how to clean your apartment when you first get it. Basically like a cleanse kind of thing, because you don't know what was going on in here before, who was in here before. But this time she used the same thing, but for her apartment. As she's doing that, as she's cleaning, guess who shows up at her door yet again? The way that it is, her window is right next to her front door, and she has curtains, and during the day she would have the curtains open, you know, and so that's how he was able to see her inside. And so he showed up, he's knocking on the door, she doesn't want to answer, she goes to pick up the phone to call the cops again. She's doing that, he's screaming at her, where's the necklace? Why did you take off the necklace? He realized that that wasn't working, and she's dead ass about to call the cops. He starts pleading, he's on his knees, he's crying. For some reason, she don't give a fuck. Like, she don't. She wants you to take that crying shit over there. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like herself again. Like, yeah, I genuinely don't give a fuck. Call the cops. The cops came. She ended up having to get a restraining order against that man. That's how bad it got. Now, fast forward to now present time, she is engaged to a Christian man, and she is also a Christian. And she's a believer, guys. Hallelujah. Don't get me wrong, she's not one of those Christians that turn Christian and think they just run at everything and they're so pure and whatever. Still learning, you know, she says, and her fiance is, you know, helping her through their way. Actually recently got engaged, so make sure y'all say congratulations to her. That's what prompted her to be like, okay, this engagement, I'm engaged now. Oh yeah, I gotta tell Blizzy this now. She went from like a non-believer to that's crazy. Like, what the fuck? And I did that? Do y'all be lying? Like, do y'all just be wanting, because it's like I hear these stories, it's like, what the fuck? Little old Blizzy did that? I'm sorry. I have imposter syndrome. Wait, I love you guys so much. Don't forget to let me know what you ate in the comments. I'm sorry. I'm trying to keep up with my thoughts. Like, I'm just so amazed. Remember the sale this Friday from 12 to 3. The book will only be $10. Okay, I love you, bestie. Be safe. Bye.
Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories. The Haunted Tea Spill. This series is brought to you by all things spooky and ungodly amounts of paranormal activity, featuring the ghost on a bookcase sweatshirt. I wear it all the time and I get compliments on it all the time. If you want it, it's down here. Now on to the story. I've worked at my current job for going on 3 years now. I'm not going to get into what the job is, but just know that we have a workshop that we get our supplies at every day before doing our job. Okay. There's a lot of stories that we have about it, like shadows, footsteps, even being grabbed, but I'll only share 2 for now. We'll be anxiously awaiting the others. Story 1. For the sake of the story, we'll use the names Reg and Bob. Reg being my brother, Bob being my coworker. Reg used to be the lead/supervisor at my job, and he mostly stayed at the workshop and did computer work. His work area was in a corner facing away from the door. See, I don't like that. I don't like when my back is towards the door. I gotta see every fucking thing. To give you an idea of the layout, the front entrance leads to the main office, and if you walk through the second door, you'll be in the warehouse. The warehouse also has an entrance that the employees mainly use. Reg is doing his work on his computer and hears the door to the warehouse open. Keep in mind that the door isn't light. So we got a buff ghost, huh? They got gems in the afterlife. You can hear it when it opens and hear it when it shuts. He hears the door open thinking it's Bob, and then he hears the second door to the office open. Still focused on his computer, he can hear and feel Bob walk up behind him, say nothing, then hears him walk to the front entrance and leave. A few minutes later, Reg hears Bob pull up to the warehouse, go through the doors, put his hands over his eyes, and says, "Guess who?" Reg is confused and laughs and asks Bob, "What are you doing, man? Did you go around the building and come back in?" That's when Bob tells him, "What do you mean? I just got here a second ago." To this day, I still wonder if he was messing with him or not, but given the history of this workshop, it's easy to believe it. Story 2. It was one night late at the shop and we had just finished our work for the day. I asked Bob to unlock the door so that I can go to the bathroom before I head home. He does that and we all say goodbye. As I'm in the bathroom, I can hear clear as day a woman talking in the office as if she's on the phone. I'm thinking that our office manager is still here for some reason, but she usually leaves at 5, and I didn't see her or anyone else for that matter before I entered the bathroom. I brush it off as maybe just my mind playing tricks on me, but then I see a shadow of someone's boots in front of the door, as if they were waiting outside the door for me. No. I finish up and check out the office, and there's nobody there. Nobody on the couches, nobody in the chairs, nobody in the warehouse, not even a car in the parking lot. Britches. Shitting them. So I turn off all the lights and leave as quick as I can out of there. Ever since then, there hasn't been too much activity as far as I know, but if there's any other stories that any of my coworkers would like to share with me, I'll do my best to share if they're okay with it. Imagine being stuck at your day job, even in death. That is what I imagine hell is. Rate these on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being really scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most, which one was creepier. Not too scary, but definitely gives you the heebs-jeebs. I'll see y'all at the next episode. Stay spooky, friends.
Ooh, I gotta tell you about this Scottish ghost that's hanging out in West Virginia. Lip gloss on so I can run this mouth. Now focus. Scary story time. Fright Night Files. I get this email from this girl named Teddy. We're gonna call her Teddy. That's not her real name. But anyway, like ancestors came from Scotland and they ended up in West Virginia and they all ended up working in the coal mines. You know, that's kind of like a thing that everyone does in that area. A lot of people work in the coal mines. So if you're not from around there and you don't know about it, know it's a big deal and know it's super dangerous and people really don't like to work in them, but it's good money. Anyway, her grandfather was working in the coal mines and that it was the early 80s. There was a collapse in the mine and 3 guys died in that collapse and they were able to get 2 of the bodies out, but one of them they weren't able to get to. The grandfather kind of went like unwell after that and he didn't speak. He went total mute. He didn't speak anymore since the 80s. So the family thought that, okay, you know, they did all the things to try to get him to talk again. He just would not talk until on his deathbed in 2011, he told his daughter, Teddy's mom, what really happened. And she said the mom was going to be pissed for her telling me, but what mama didn't know wouldn't hurt her. And I was like, okay, Bobby Boucher, I'm listening because you guys know I love me some Scotland. So I'm like, keep going. Tell me all of it. So about 2 months before the collapse happened, all of the men that worked in the mines started seeing something. They started seeing this really weird thing. I'm going to say it one time because you're not supposed to say it more than once or it will show up and I'm not dealing with that, doing that or whatever. It's called a Ganfer, Ganfer. Now it kind of works like a mimic, right? It will show up and look like someone you know or look like something you know or something like that. I don't know, but you don't say its name like more than once. You don't whistle. It's kind of like, you know, how all the Appalachian folklore is. And you don't talk about it. So around 2 months, someone seen it. They told the others were like, you know, like, shut up, stop talking about it. Well, he had 3 friends, the 3 that died. They all kind of worked together in the same area. Well, they kept like mocking it, just kind of like talking about it over and over again. And Teddy's grandpa was like, listen, y'all need to shut the hell up because this is no joke. You know, like my great grandfather, all the ancestors told me all about it. Like, don't mess around with it. They kept doing it. Well, then one of the guys like whistled, said the name, did all the stuff, and like mocked it or whatever. And then the collapse happened. Like it fell on them, all the things. He said it was tragic. They get the two out. But here's the scary part, right? The one that was mocking it the most stood up, like come up out of like the rocks and stuff and was like, and started coming at them. They had to do all the things to like try to get out, and it was clearly not the guy anymore. He told his daughter that he had went mute because he didn't want to like mess up and say the name or do anything that would like bring that thing up out of the mines to his family. So that's why he had been silent the whole time. But here's the thing, before he passed away, like at the very end, he said the name like 3, 4, or 5 times or whatever. So she said that they've kind of been seeing things like off and on, and then they'll move and it'll go away. And she said they've just been hopping around, kind of like house hopping, apartment hopping, trying to run from this thing. And she asked me like what she should do about it. I'm like, girl, I've never even heard of this. I don't know what to tell you. Never heard of it. So have you all heard of that? And do you know what she should do? Because I do not. I'm like, run, girl. I don't know. Thanks, Grandpa, I guess.
So destiny swapping is real. So apparently, if you didn't know, people can swap literal actual destinies with you. Basically, if you're in a stage in your life where, your life is slowing down, you got some hating people around you, you got some haters around you, well, I am back with another spooky story. Imagine being best friends with somebody since you guys were in middle school. You guys grew up together, talked about everything. When everything was going wrong with your best friend, you stepped up. You opened your life, your home, your parents to your best friend. Now, even though your best friend never really had as much as you did, you never held that over her head. But you've never really noticed how you having everything in your life, like a home, loving parent, and opportunities, can eventually become a problem in y'all's friendship. At this point, you and Bestie had been friends for years. You get the opportunity to go to your dream college. Your best friend decided to stay home and work. While you're away at college, you built this new life for yourself. But you never forgot about your best friend back at home because every time you would visit, you guys would catch up and give each other the 411. It was never anything weird as far as you're concerned. Fast forward 4 years, you graduate from college, you got your dream car, you decide to move back home. You move back home, you get your dream job, a cute little apartment. Life is going good. For some reason, it just seems like your best friend just cannot catch a break. When she comes around your apartment a lot, you don't question it. When she starts wearing your clothes, you don't question it. And even down to when she starts acting like you and sounding like you don't question it because, well, that does tend to happen when you hang out with someone often. You're very generous, so you would even give this girl your old bundles to wear. A few months later, some of your personal stuff starts going missing. One of those things happened to be your grandmother's ring. Who would steal this ring? Well, directly after that, things in your life really started going downhill. Things took a turn for the worst, and you damn near lose everything. Strange. Come to find out, the person that you least expected was the one doing this to you all along. If you want to hear the full story, no details skip. It's an 18-minute video, so you just have to go watch the full story. I dropped this literally like almost 2 days ago. This story was heart-wrenching. One of the saddest betrayal stories that I've told in a long time. So make sure you check it out. And my name is the same on every single platform, so just look me up, Rebecca's Journey. I'm your favorite Haitian homegirl.
I worked at a distribution warehouse overnight, and it was a smaller crew, just like a little skeleton crew, probably about 5 people per shift. There was this one guy, his name was Marcus. He was pretty quiet, he kept to himself, but he was always there. We shared the same shift. We had the same routine, we would clock in, we would do inventory, we would barely talk, and then we would go home. But there was this one night where he didn't show up, and people didn't think too much of it because people called out all of the time. But when I went to go check the schedule, his name wasn't on it, like at all, nowhere. And so I wondered if he quit or he got fired, so I went and I asked my supervisor about it, and he just kind of looked at me confused. He said, "Who?" And I said, "Marcus. He's tall, he always wears a black hoodie." And he just looked at me and shook his head and he said, "We don't have anybody like that works here." Well, that didn't sit right with me because I've literally exchanged numbers with Marcus for shift coverage. So I went to go look at my text messages and I pulled it up and they were still there. Same number, same conversations. I showed my coworker. She read through them and she said, "Who are you texting?" And I was like, "Marcus." She looked at me like I was joking. There was no contact saved, it was just the phone number. So I went to try to call it. It rang once, twice, Somebody picked up, it was silence for a second, and then somebody said, "You weren't supposed to notice," and the call ended. I left early that night. I didn't feel right staying. Then the next night when I came back, I went to go check his locker just to make sure that I wasn't crazy. And it was empty. There was no lock, there was no stuff, nothing. It was like the locker had never even been assigned. But this is the part that messes me up the most. I came in one night and I stayed way later than I usually do. It was probably around 3 a.m. I was the only one left in my section. And that's when I heard something. It was a scanner. It was that beeping noise that the handheld scanners make, and it was coming from the aisle behind me. So I went over there to go look, and I found the little scanner sitting on a shelf. There was nobody there, but the scanner was on the shelf. The scanner was still on. It was lit up, and it said last user name, Marcus.
There's an old saying that you should always close your curtains at night because you can allow what's outside to be invited in. Now, this is a story from Eastern Tennessee. There was this man named Levi, and Levi said he lived in this house that was right next to the woods. And he said this particular night, he went to bed as usual, and he started having this dream. And he said in this dream, there was this man staring at him from his bedroom window. Said he had pale white skin, no nose, no mouth, and these solid black eyes. And on top of his head, he had a couple scraggly pieces of hair. And he said he was just looking at him in this dream. And then all of a sudden, he said he heard a voice say, "Come outside." And he wakes up, and he said right away he looked out his window, and sure enough, that man was standing outside of his window. And then he just took off into the woods. So he was kind of a little freaked out by that, but was like, maybe I was just dreaming that still, and it was all in my head. Until he looks at the window and he sees what looks like a face print. A couple weeks later, David said, he goes to sleep, and this time he has a dream. He's in his house and he's walking into his kitchen. And he said when he looked out his back kitchen door, he could see this same man, creature, whatever you want to call it, outside on his back porch. And he said this thing was sort of bent over and it was pacing back and forth, just moving its shoulders. He said it then stopped at the door window and it turned and it looked at him and it said, "Come outside." And he said he woke up and he was like, man, that dream just felt like really real. So he walks out to his back porch and he looks, there's no one out there. But when he looks down at the snow on the porch, he can see what look like footprints. So David didn't know, Levi didn't know what to make of this. And he, at the time, just thought, it was just bad nightmares he was having. So a couple weeks later after this, he goes to bed again one night. And he says he has this dream. And in this dream, once again, he's in his bedroom, laying in his bed. And he says he hears the front door open. And he said all of a sudden he heard footsteps kind of, moving through the living room, down the hallway. And then his door opens. And he said in walks this white creature, bent over with its shoulders kind of moving as it walked. And he said he came right over to his bed and it sat on his stomach. And he said the whole time he just couldn't move. He said this thing just kind of was like smiling at him as it's sitting on top of him. And he said it turned and it looked at him and it said, "I said, come outside." And then he said he lifted up his arm and it scratched him right on his side. He wakes up and it was like, that seemed all too real. He lifts up his shirt and in the place where he got scratched in the dream, he had this huge scratch. And so the next day, he goes to his neighbor's house and he's like, "Hey, this is going to sound weird, but like, have you ever seen sort of like a weird guy that's been, looking in windows or anything?" And he said his neighbor just turned and had this like shocking look on his face. And he was like, "You mean the pale white guy with, a couple strands of hair and the solid black eyes?" And he's like, "Yeah, how did you know?" And he goes, "When I first moved here, I used to leave my curtains open and I would see him peeking in my window, and he would tell me to come outside. And he said, so after that, I started keeping my curtains closed at night. And so Levi said after he had heard that, he never slept at night without the curtain.
Let's read another scary story that was sent to us, and this person needs some advice. For some context, since I was a child, I've always had vivid memories of having a friend named Chloe. Blue eyes, long blonde hair, and a smile that could light up a room. She came from a wealthy background, but was the nicest girl. But my mom said I never had a friend named Chloe. Another vivid memory I have is her death. And a week later, me at 7 or 8 being shoved into the street and dying. Following me getting these memories, I would see things. Nothing much, until one day I was walking downstairs and turned into the hallway. We had a cabinet at the end of it, and at the end, standing in front of the cabinet, was a man, about 6'6" or 6'8", wearing a cowboy hat and the most evil smile you could ever imagine. He had his hand held out in front of him, like he was asking me to come with him. I looked away and looked back, and he was gone. The following night, I woke up to see my mom hanging on the wall like Jesus. I was very Catholic at the time. When I woke up, I had scratches all over my body. In the following years, I've seen that man in every dream I've ever had, watching me, wanting me to go with him. I've also had what I think to be him, mimicking my brother. I've had multiple mediums say I have an evil spirit attached to me, and I believe this to be the man who shoved me into the street in my past life. It's been 10 years with this happening to me, and it won't leave me. I've done almost every trick in the book, including moving. If you could tell this story and get this out there, I would be so grateful. Okay, before I even finished their story, I had a feeling that the cowboy was the person who pushed her in the past life. Like, it seems like this cowboy spirit is following them around. I don't know. I've truthfully never read a story like this, but it is so freaking creepy. So if you have any advice or if you've experienced something similar, please let us know in the comments. I'm going to tag the person who sent this to me so they can read all the comments as well.
Let's say you found yourself in a big city and stuff starts hitting the fan, right? Society's breaking down, everything's going crazy, and you need to escape from the city. Or let's just say you find yourself in a big city and you're in a not so great neighborhood and you need to get out of there safely. What do you do? Now, there is something called the gray man concept. The gray man concept is essentially making yourself invisible. You don't want to be detected. You sort of want to blend in with the people around you. And there are various things you can do to sort of survive and evade detection in large cities. One thing being, dress in neutral colors, okay? Wear maybe some white or some gray, plain t-shirt, right? Blue jeans, maybe some white or gray cheap tennis shoes, a baseball cap, right? Don't draw any attention to yourself. Nothing flashy, right? Nothing brightly colored. Just keep it plain and as simple as possible. Also, you don't want to be walking around looking at your phone. You want to keep your phone concealed. You want to keep any survival tools, anything that you have with you. You want to keep that hidden. You don't want people to see that. Do not draw attention to yourself. Also, your behavior is going to be very important. Okay? If you're acting nervous, if you're looking around, right, that makes you noticeable. People are going to see that. So you don't want to draw attention to yourself. You want to remain cool, calm, collective. Act like the environment around you. Pay attention to the people, to the atmosphere, and sort of replicate that. You do not want to present a situation where you're running away or you're standing around or you're making too much eye contact. Make yourself as plain, as small as possible. Just fit in with the crowd. It's also important to keep situational awareness. Kind of look around you. Know where there are safe points. recognize alleyways, recognize places that are well lit up, landmarks. If you know, okay, there's a waterway that way, so that means I must be going east. I need to get out. I need to go west, right? Keep your eyes concentrated at all times and focused to your surroundings so you know constantly where you are, what's going on, and what's happening around you. Now, this isn't 100% effective, but in certain survival situations, it could just save your life.
I used to do overnight inventory for a chain of storage facilities. And not like the front office stuff, more of like the back units. The ones that are locked, the ones where people use them to basically forget things exist. They have no cameras inside, nothing like that. Most nights were pretty boring, just clipboard, flashlight, marking units, that kind of a thing. There was one specific facility that they sent me to just one time a month. And it was just past town. There was no street lights, no other buildings, literally just stacks of metal doors. So before my shift started, my manager pulled me in and he said, "Don't look inside any of the units that have a red sticker on them, just mark them as verified." I just kind of assumed it was legal stuff, delinquent holds, evidence holders, that kind of a thing. Around 1:30 a.m. I came across my first red sticker, storage unit, and I just kind of marked it off of my list, and it was unit 317, and I started to walk away, and that's when I heard it. It was a thud on the inside. I just kind of froze and I waited, and then I heard something else. It was like something hit the wall, like something's weight shifted against the metal. I told myself maybe it was an animal or just something falling over, and then that's when I heard a voice, and it was very soft and it just said hello. I dropped my flashlight and I just stood there trying to convince myself that what I heard wasn't real. And then I heard another soft whisper saying, "Is anybody there?" And it sounded a little desperate. I ran back to the office and I told my manager, and he didn't seem very surprised, and he just said, "Did you open the unit?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Okay, just mark it as verified on your list and continue on." I should have left right then, but I needed this job so bad. So I kept going, and every single red sticker unit that I passed that night made a noise. Scratching, whispering, soft crying. By the time I had finished, it was about 4 a.m., and I went back to the office, shaking a little bit because all your mind can do is question what's inside of those units. And I noticed that there was a new sheet of paper, and it was marked from all of the red sticker units, and there was a name on each of them. Next to each red sticker unit was a person's name. I recognized one name on there specifically, Unit 317. It was my name, and it was set for next month's inventory. I immediately quit. About a week later, I drove past the facility again just to convince myself that everything was normal. People were moving things back and forth. Everything seemed okay. I went inside and I asked a lady about Unit 317, and she said, "We don't have a Unit 317. And I said, "Yes, you do, because I saw it when I was working here. I've been inside of it." I had literally heard somebody inside of this unit. And so she just turned the map of the units towards me, and it did skip. It went from 316 to 318. There was no 317 on her unit map. 2 nights ago, I got a call from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer it, but I did. It was a long silence, and then it was a voice, soft, very weak, and it just said, "Hello." It was me.
A lot of people believe in something called the Dogman. Now, the Dogman was first seen in Michigan, and this is sort of a hotspot for sightings. The Dogman is a dog-like version of Bigfoot. Now, there was a story out of northern Michigan. There was this boy who said that him, his brother, and his father, every couple weeks, they would go out to this property that his father owned, and they would gather firewood. And he said his dad had this big trailer that they would fill all the way to the top. And when it was full, they would leave. Well, this particular night, him and his brother and his father, they go to this spot in the middle of their property, and they start chopping wood. And it started to get dark, but by this time they had only filled up half the trailer. But he said his father started to get really nervous. And all of a sudden he tells him and his brother, I want you to get in the car immediately. Don't look back. Don't say anything. Get in the car, lock the doors, and be quiet. And so he started, to kind of pick up his axe and pick up some of the tools. And his dad's like, no, just leave them. Take your brother, run to the front of the car, get inside and lock the door. So he just grabs his brother and they started running to the front of this truck. As they're running, he said he kind of glanced over and he could see shadows of something moving through the woods, kind of following them. So him and his brother, they jump in the truck. He locks the doors. And he said, there was just this really bad feeling in the air, like something was going to happen. And he said, all of a sudden, they hear boom, 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 boom. His dad is banging on the window. Let me in the truck. So his dad jumps in the truck and he starts the car or the truck up and they take off. And his dad is just speeding and this trailer is thrashing back and forth, almost getting ready to fall off. And his father doesn't care. And he said, it was strange because normally they wouldn't leave till that trailer was full. And he said, as his father's driving, up this bumpy dirt road, all of a sudden, this crashing sound, like something hits the front of the vehicle. And his father slams on the brakes. And as they look on the hood of this truck, there is a rotten carcass sitting there. Something threw this rotten deer carcass at the front of this vehicle. And he said that's when they heard this loud roar. And as they looked over, they seen what looked like a dog standing on two legs. And so his dad hit the gas and he starts speeding off out of there. And this thing begins to chase them. And it was keeping pace with the vehicle for some time. He said eventually it broke off and it went into the woods. And his father just kept on driving. And they kept asking his father, what was that? What happened? And his father said, just be quiet. Like, you don't need to know. Let's not talk about it. And his father never told him what he had seen that night.
On an evening in October of 2003, a woman named Tina carried a grocery bag down the hallway of a big apartment building in Harlem, New York. The hallway was narrow, with white tile walls and heavy metal doors and overhead lights that flickered. And as Tina stopped in front of her door, she caught a whiff of a familiar smell coming from across the hall in apartment 5E. It smelled like urine and rotting meat. Tina grimaced, but quickly set down her grocery bag and began sifting through her purse for her keys. But right as she found them, she heard footsteps coming down the hall behind her. She turned, and when she saw who was walking up the hallway towards her, she began to panic because it was Antoine Yates, the owner of apartment 5E, the stinky apartment. He was coming right down the hall, and he was carrying what appeared to be this huge sack that maybe looked like it was filled with sand or something. She didn't care, but she did not want to be near this guy. And so as fast as she could, she put the key in the door, opened it up, flew inside, grabbed her groceries, shut the door, and deadbolted it. Now, Tina did feel sort of guilty about being really obviously rude towards Antoine. I mean, Antoine had lived in this building for years, and at one point she had thought he was a nice guy. But lately, he'd gotten really weird, and she no longer wanted anything to do with him. First of all, there was that horrific smell coming from his apartment basically at all hours. And then there was the fact that Antoine basically stopped leaving the apartment altogether. Like he was basically in his apartment 24/7. As far as Tina could tell, he maybe left once a day, tops, for maybe like an hour a day. But other than that, he was like a constant presence across the hall. But beyond the smell and his reclusive nature, the most sort of alarming aspect of his recent weird behavior were all the random loud crashing sounds that Tina would hear coming from Antoine's apartment at all hours. Even though, from what she could tell, he didn't have any visitors ever. It was just him in there. Now, Tina had no idea what Antoine was doing in there, but she assumed whatever it wasn't good. But it wasn't her business. And so she decided that the best thing she could do was just stay in her apartment, make sure the door was locked, and hope at some point he stopped doing whatever it was he was doing. A couple days later, Tina went down to the lobby to check her mail. And when she did, she ran into a woman named Joyce who lived in apartment 4E, which was directly below Antoine's apartment. Tina said hello to her, and as she opened up her mailbox, Joyce came over and stood next to her with this sort of strange look on her face. Tina picked up on it and asked her what was wrong. And Joyce told her that last night she'd noticed liquid dripping down through her ceiling. And at first she thought it was maybe a burst pipe or an overflowing sink. but when she got a rag and went to clean it up, she realized it wasn't water. It smelled like pee. Then Joyce, she lowered her voice and leaned in close to Tina, and she said the pee wasn't the only weird thing. Sometimes late at night, when the building was quiet, she said she could hear what sounded like whimpering coming from the upstairs apartment, Antoine's apartment. And at this, Tina's heart began to pound. Now, she had tried to just kind of, mentally and physically avoid the whole Antoine situation, whatever it was. But now that she knew other neighbors were also noticing bizarre things like she was, she felt like she had to act. And so Tina said to Joyce that, you know what, we really ought to call the housing authority and see if they'd come out and investigate to see what was going on. But Joyce said she'd already tried that. She'd called multiple times, and so far, nobody had done anything. So Tina told Joyce that, okay, well, let's all get together, all the other neighbors, and go to the housing authority as a group, and maybe then they'd be taken more seriously. Joyce liked the idea, so the two women exchanged numbers, and then Tina went back up to her apartment. But the next day, before Tina had time to chat with any more neighbors, she came home from the store and walked into the lobby of the apartment building, and she saw Antoine on the floor of the lobby screaming in pain with two police officers huddled over him. He had these gaping wounds all over his arm and his leg, and there was blood all over the tile floor. Tina didn't know what to do, so she just hustled right past them through the lobby, made her way upstairs, and got inside her apartment. But once she was inside, her curiosity got the best of her, and she ran to the window to see if there was anything going on outside that could begin to explain what was going on with Antoine. And outside, she saw an ambulance pull up, and then moments later, paramedics loaded Antoine into the back of it, and they took off. After that, Tina basically sat there expecting any moment for the police to come barreling down the hallway and break down Antoine's door, apartment 5E, to finally put an end to whatever was happening inside of there. But she sat there waiting for an hour, and she didn't hear anything. And then finally, after, about an hour, she saw those two police officers from the lobby get back in their squad car and drive away. Tina was shocked. She had no idea what happened to Antoine, but she also couldn't conceptualize of what Antoine would have told those officers that would make them think they should just leave without checking his apartment. And so Tina felt like she couldn't just sit here and do nothing, like somebody needed to go in there. Tina didn't know if maybe Antoine was hurting someone in his apartment and they had finally fought back, that's why he was all cut up, or maybe if he was involved in some kind of violent criminal activity or what, but it was clearly never going to end unless she spoke up. So, as much as it terrified her to get involved here, she picked up the phone, called the police, and told them everything she had seen and heard. The next day, Tina was coming home from work when she saw this huge crowd gathered outside her apartment building. Hundreds of her neighbors were just standing on the sidewalk looking up at the side of the building. And when Tina looked up, she saw what they were watching. A police officer was rappelling down the side of this building from one of the upper levels, and with him he had this big rifle and some other huge weapon, and he was slowly making his way down. But then he eventually stopped right outside a 5th floor window, and Tina realized he was stopping outside of Antoine's window. That was his apartment. And so Tina and the others watched as this officer began to tap on the glass of the window. And then there was this huge explosion of glass that flew outwards, like the window had broken, but from the inside going out. That officer immediately raised his rifle and began firing into the apartment while also signaling to the police officers above him, leaning out of another apartment to pull him up. And they immediately began pulling him up. And then a few minutes later, a half dozen more police officers came running out the front door of the apartment building, and they were carrying this massive tarp between them with something obviously very heavy and large inside of it. Now, none of this made any sense to Tina until the officers passed by her and she caught a glimpse of what was in the tarp. It would turn out Tina and Joyce were right to be suspicious of Antoine. But it wasn't because he was a violent criminal who was secretly hurting people in his apartment. No, his secret was actually much weirder. Antoine had a very strange pet. Specifically, he had a 400-pound tiger named Ming, who had been living in Antoine's apartment for years. It slept in one of his bedrooms with a giant sand pit. It peed basically everywhere, and it lived off raw meat. Antoine's horrible wounds that day were caused by Ming biting him when Antoine tried to stop the tiger from pouncing on one of his other pets, a stray kitten that he had taken in. As for Antoine and Ming, they both survived this encounter. Antoine was ultimately arrested for reckless endangerment, and Ming, who was just tranquilized during that exchange with the police officer, was carried out of the apartment and taken to a sanctuary in Ohio. Also, that stray kitten survived the attack as well.
Come from a family that worked in the funeral industry, so I was never really scared to be around bodies or anything like that. When I was 7 years old, I had to stay with my dad because I had chickenpox. He was a medical examiner and would occasionally do transports, meaning he would pick up the deceased and take them to the morgue. On one particular call, it was a man who had been found in his home and was already in decomposition. He smelled very bad. My dad placed him in the van, and I suddenly felt a bad energy coming from the man. During the ride to the morgue and even on our way home, the atmosphere felt thick and heavy, and the energy was very low. Once we got home, it was already bedtime, and every night I would have water by my bed. My dad was walking to the kitchen to get my water, and I got up to ask if I could have a snack. When I went to talk to him, I saw the same man we had picked up earlier walking behind my dad. His spirit had attached itself to him. I knew it was the same man because my dad had his ID card for the morgue workers, and when I saw it, I recognized his face. After that, there were times when my dad would bring home spirits, and I would see black figures throughout the house.
At 2:45 p.m. on January 6th, 1995, a 45-year-old man named MacArthur Wheeler walked towards the front doors of a bank in Swissvale, Pennsylvania, which is a small town near Pittsburgh. MacArthur had on a mask and was dressed in a big blue parka, and in one of his pockets, he was carrying a semi-automatic handgun. MacArthur was about to rob this bank at gunpoint, but weirdly, he did not feel nervous, despite the fact that, MacArthur had never robbed a bank before. But one of his friends, 43-year-old Clifton Johnson, had. And Clifton was already inside the bank, waiting in line and pretending to be a customer, even though he was actually MacArthur's co-conspirator. MacArthur and Clifton had spent days planning out this robbery together, down to every last detail. And even though MacArthur had been kind of scared at first, Clifton had talked him through every possible scenario and made sure that they had a plan for everything that could go wrong. So now MacArthur was 100% confident that they were going to get away with this, which again is why he was not nervous. So this day, MacArthur walked up to the bank's doors and went inside. He had to squint through his mask because it obscured his view a little bit, but he saw Clifton standing in line, which immediately gave him another burst of confidence to actually see Clifton. He was here. So far, things were going exactly as planned. And so MacArthur quickly pushed his way through the line, and he locked eyes with the bank teller. And as he did, he pulled out his gun, he aimed it at them, and he told them to hand over all the money. MacArthur heard the sound of other people in the bank, other patrons and other staff beginning to gasp because they're seeing what's happening here. And so MacArthur quickly turned around with his gun still in his hand, and he told everybody that he didn't want to hurt anyone. Everybody just needed to stay calm, and as soon as he got the money, he'd be gone. Then MacArthur turned back to the teller, who by this point had gathered up all the cash in the register and was literally just holding it out like, here, take it. And MacArthur, he grabbed the cash, put it in one of his pockets, he put his gun back inside of his pocket, then he looked over at Clifton, and the two men nodded, and then they turned and ran out of the bank. About 3 months later, in the early morning hours of April 20th, 1995, MacArthur was sleeping inside his apartment just outside of Pittsburgh. After the robbery, he and Clifton had escaped with a little over $5,000, and they'd gone their separate ways in order to lay low. So they weren't really in contact, but to MacArthur, it seemed like everything had worked out perfectly, because here he was, still a free man with all this cash, and the cops hadn't even shown up once to question him. But on this particular night, a pounding on MacArthur's door woke him up, and he bolted upright in bed, and he heard somebody yell at him to open up, because it was the police. Now at this point, MacArthur was definitely nervous. However, He sort of calmed himself down and told himself that right now his best option was just to play it cool. Because even if the cops suspected him in that robbery, there was simply no way they could possibly prove he'd actually done it. He'd been wearing a mask and a huge parka that totally obscured his identity. So MacArthur, he got out of bed and he walked over to the door. He opened it up and sure enough, there's all these police officers standing in the doorway. And MacArthur pretended to act confused and asked them, what's going on here? And that was when one of the officers told MacArthur he was under arrest for armed robbery, and then showed him a printed photo from one of the bank's security cameras. And clear as day, there he was. So this photo clearly showed MacArthur's face. Every detail was perfectly visible. It was him, for sure. He didn't even look like he was wearing a mask. But MacArthur couldn't wrap his mind around how this was possible. He looked from the picture up to the cops and just said, "But I wore the juice." It would turn out the mask MacArthur was wearing during this robbery was not a ski mask or a Halloween mask or really a mask in any traditional sense of the word. What MacArthur and his co-conspirator Clifton had both done, and what they truly thought would disguise their identities completely, was rub lemon juice on their faces. They believed that lemon juice would essentially act as a mask and make them literally invisible to security cameras. Unfortunately, though, lemon juice does not make you invisible. And so once the police accessed the bank security footage, they saw clear as day MacArthur and Clifton committing this crime, and they arrested them both. Clifton was sentenced to 5 years in prison for armed bank robbery, and MacArthur was sentenced to 22.5 years. But this was not the end of the story, because Clifton and MacArthur's ridiculous crime made headlines. And before long, a professor of social psychology at Cornell University read about it, and it made him realize something. The fact that MacArthur literally believed lemon juice would make him invisible, and he acted on that knowledge, or that supposed knowledge, to commit this crime, and then was shocked when it didn't work, that suggests a level of stupidity that is just exceptionally high. So high that this professor began to wonder if maybe MacArthur is so stupid, he actually doesn't understand how stupid he really was. And so this led the professor to research this idea, and he ultimately established a new psychological concept that we now call the Dunning-Kruger effect, which essentially says that the more incompetent a person is at something, the less likely they are to recognize their own incompetence. Basically, the dumber you are, the more confident you become.
This is a story about astral projection that was sent in by someone who says that she met some shadowy figures in the astral realm who asked her essentially to relocate her soul. And the person who sent this story we'll call Macy, and she said she has a government job and a few years ago landed a dream contract a few hundred miles below the Arctic Circle in Alaska. Now, Macy had already been in the habit of meditating as she fell asleep, and she would often listen to the sound of Tibetan bells playing. She said it was extremely relaxing and it helped her sleep more deeply. And she had astral projected before, though not on purpose, but her experience in Alaska was entirely different. If you're unfamiliar, astral projection is essentially the feeling of detaching from your body while asleep, but you're lucid, you can feel it happening. And some people can actually train themselves to do this and have these types of experiences, while for other people, the experience is accidental. Macy's first experience with the astral realm came on accident, and she could feel herself detached from her body, and she felt herself looking down at her body, but she got a little bit nervous because she had heard that negative entities could attach themselves to you in this astral realm. Because she was lucid and could make conscious decisions in this dream state, she said she decided not to go any further, and she felt herself snap back into her body as if she were a slingshot. And she said she kind of put the experience out of her mind. She thought maybe it was just a strange dream, and she didn't want to explore it any further. She didn't have any more strange sleep experiences until she found herself in Alaska years later, and she was in a remote part of Alaska, but she said it wasn't so remote that there wasn't a grocery store and they did have running water. She meditated and was drifting off to sleep when she saw what she described as a tunnel forming above her. The room she was in seemed to open up, and around her was the expansive Alaskan wilderness. And at the top of this tunnel, a blue light beamed down at her, and some shadowy beings came to view around the edge of the tunnel. They were beckoning her to join them, and she said she had this overwhelming sense of uneasiness. It wasn't necessarily dread, but she felt herself reaching up toward them, and then they started whispering, and she said she couldn't make out what they were saying, but she got the overwhelming sense, almost as if it was telepathic, that they were beckoning her to join them. Sensation was that of feeling like her soul was suspended in this blue beam of light between her body and these beings. She knew that if she made the conscious decision in her sleep state, that that's where her soul would have went. And she says she doesn't feel like they were alien in the sense that we think of extraterrestrials. Also doesn't feel right to her to describe it as going to a parallel universe, but she says she mentions astral projection because that's the closest experience that she has to compare it to. She says she talked to some friends she made in Alaska, and one of them suggested that the veil is thinner there, and she doesn't necessarily know what she experienced. She doesn't know if she was hallucinating or dreaming, or if it's a legitimate experience that others have had. But it felt real enough and scared her enough that she decided to start taking sleep aids so that she wouldn't have an experience like this again. She said, I wasn't terrified, I was curious, but I felt suspicious of it, and I still feel that way now. I don't want my soul to relocate if it was a real experience, because I have too much to live for now. Part of her wonders if the reason she had this experience then was because she didn't have her daughter yet, and so her soul wasn't necessarily tethered to this realm. But she says she does wonder if the reason so many people go missing in remote areas like this is because the veil is thinner, like her friend said. Sharing this primarily to see what everybody else thought about astral projection and lucid dreaming in the astral realm, and if you've had experiences that are similar, because she said she just wants to feel less crazy. If you have any thoughts for her, or if you have any idea of what she experienced or who these shadow beings were, please let her know. She'll be reading the comments, and if you have a spooky, scary story time that you think nobody would believe, or that you've been too afraid to share because you feel like other people are gonna think you're crazy, send it and we'd love to hear it.
Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
What if I told you that Trinidad and Tobago has one of the most unique religious experiences in the entire world, and it happens in Easter, and it's not only celebrated by Roman Catholics but also by Hindus under one church? Have you ever heard about Ladivina Pastora, also known as Suparike Mai or Supari Mai? So it is believed that she, Our Lady, came as a vision or a dream to one of the Capuchin monks in Spain and said that she will be called Ladivina Pastora. So she's made with African cedar, so she is very dark brown or kind of copper color. She's about 2.5 feet tall, and her hair is said to be made of real hair, real what would seem indigenous or Wario hair. So there are many stories surrounding Ladivina Pastora. One story is said that she was made in the likeness of the Wario or indigenous people of Venezuela. So when the Roman Catholics were coming to Venezuela, they were on their mission to convert the natives to Christianity. However, in that last trip, they were fleeing persecution from Venezuela, and they got into a shipwreck in between Venezuela and Trinidad. It is said that one of the priests, the surviving priest, he was holding on to something at the bow of the ship, and when he washed ashore to Queen Anne Beach, which is in southwest Trinidad, and he came back to consciousness, he realized that he was holding on to Ladivina Pastora, and he believed that she would have saved his life. There's other stories that said that she would have been made in the likeness of the indigenous people or the Wario people, because there was a young girl who saved, a young Wario or indigenous girl who saved the Spanish priest's life. So it is believed that when the Spanish priest brought the statue to Superior and they felt obligated to leaving it there, it is believed that the Spaniards hid her in the nearby forest where she was later found. Some said that she was found by a woman who was tending to a dasheen bush patch, and she accidentally hit the statue with a gardening tool and it started to bleed, while others believed that she was found by men who were clearing the bushes in Superior. So there's one other story that believes that she was created with the sand of Superior, like magically created and had life. As you all know, Superior is known as, its name means the sand city, and it's believed that she was created from the sand of Superior. So now you're probably wondering, okay, Ladivina Pastora, she is a Catholic priestess. She is known as the divine goddess. She was brought to Trinidad from Venezuela. She was made in the Wario's likeness when they were on their mission to convert those to Christianity. Where do Hindus come in all of this? Now, after you know that we had Indian indentureship in Trinidad and Tobago. And many Hindus believed that the Black Madonna or Ladivina Pastora looked very similar to Ma Kali or Mata Kali, who is one of the goddesses that is worshipped in the Hindu faith. And for those who may not know, Ma Kali, she is prayed to for protection and power, the destruction of ego, liberation, transformation, and balancing life's problems. So, the Hindus would have seen her as a manifestation of Kali Ma, one of their goddesses, and then the Catholics would have seen her as a manifestation of the Virgin Mary. And of course, we had the Chinese, who were obviously a minority. However, they also used to pilgrimage to see Ladivina Pastora, as she was seen as a manifestation of Guan Yin, which is their East Asian goddess of maternal compassion. However, majority of the Chinese would have then adopted to the Roman Catholic faith. However, many Hindus would have experienced what you call acculturation, where they would have adapted to the Roman Catholic ways, but they still preserve their Hindu ways of worship. So if you go to the pilgrimage of Suparikimai or Ladivina Pastora, you would see that she's worshipped in many different ways, and the Roman Catholic Church does not stop people from worshipping her in the only way that they know how. It is the most beautiful example of, I would say, a miracle, because she's worshipped and she's seen as a manifestation of different religious beings, and she's worshipped in the way that they know how. Ladivina Pastora is believed to perform miracles. So many women who are wanting children, many people who are having health ailments or wanting wealth or wanting to remove obstacles from their life, you go and you pray and you give her an offering and you make a promise to her. And once you once you get your wish, you fulfill that promise, because it is believed that if you make a promise to her and she fulfills your wish, and you don't fulfill your end of the bargain, which is your promise, your gift that she has given you can be taken away. So let me know, has any of you all ever been to the Ladivina Pastora Church in Siparia? And have you ever been to the pilgrimage? It is really a beautiful experience seeing people of many different faiths come together and worship in a Catholic church, and it's something that you probably would not see in any other parts of the world.
Do y'all remember this game, Charlie Charlie? I'm gonna be honest, I completely forgot about this game entirely until I read a scary story submission in my inbox, and this was the topic of conversation. I want to say this trend came out in 2017, 2018-ish, where you stack two pencils on top of each other on top of a piece of paper that is quartered off by no, yes, yes, no. Essentially, the game is summoning this spirit named Charlie Charlie to ask it questions. This challenge took the world by storm, and everybody and their mothers were doing this challenge. And every single person who was doing this challenge online was able to catch the pencils moving or something happening, and that's exactly what I'm going to talk about today. So let's get into it. The person who sent me this email would like to remain anonymous, and for obvious reasons, I'm going to respect that. The person who sent me this email sent me two different stories about them playing Charlie Charlie with their friends. First one being in their apartment complex building. And for clarity purposes, this all happens in the stairwell. And this stairwell in particular had a motion sensor light for every floor. For example, if somebody came through the level 1 door, only the level 1 door light would turn on in that area of the staircase. None of the other lights would turn on. So automatically you can imagine how terrifying this is. And they are playing Charlie Charlie for so long that the automatic lights reset, which only happens if you are not moving for an allotted period of time, essentially resetting the motion detection. So as they were playing in the stairwell, the pencil starts to move. And as the person who sent me this email and her friend were looking around to see if any windows were open or anything was going on, they begin to hear heavy footsteps running up the staircase. And the scariest part about this story is the fact that when her and her friend went to go look down the banister at the other levels beneath them, there were no lights on. They were hearing someone run up the stairs in complete darkness, which means there was nobody physically there.
The second story in this email, the same group of friends went to go play Charlie Charlie. They were playing Charlie Charlie in what they called a secluded area, which was just like a storage place. I am not sure if it was inside. I don't know if it was outside. I'm not sure. But in the room that they were playing this game in, there was an HVAC duct that was like hanging down from the ceiling. And we're talking about a duct large enough where somebody could stand behind it. This particular time, they brought their other friend who was wearing a religious bracelet. We're not playing Charlie Charlie. And as this friend who has the bracelet on is watching her friends play Charlie Charlie, she sees a black figure in the corner of the room next to the duct and immediately calls it out and is like, there's something standing over there. The other two girls look over to the duct and there is no one there, and they can very well see that there's nothing there. Now, if that couldn't make it entirely worse, one of the friends who is playing this game begins to taunt the spirit that they were talking to. And finally, they ask the spirit, Charlie, Charlie, do you like blank? Nothing happens, and as they're getting up, they see the item that they asked the spirit if it liked, just hanging out there in the storage place in the same room with the duct that's hanging down from the ceiling. One of the girls picks the item up and tosses it nonchalantly, and it lands right next to the duct, right next to where their other friend said that they were seeing this man standing there. It did not move. Call it a coincidence, call it what you will. I personally don't believe in coincidences, so the end of the story makes a lot of sense to me. Both of the girls who were playing this game and taunting the spirit had sleep paralysis, and specifically sleep paralysis with the same thing the same night, and they both said that they saw a tall, thin man in their room watching them sleep. It scared them so bad because this man went from being in the corner of the room to being right in front of their faces. I just personally can't believe that I forgot about this game because it was seriously like a cultural phenomenon. I remember wanting to play it so bad but being way too scared to mess with spirits like that. And if you've been here a long time, then you know that didn't really work out in the first place. But I'm curious, am I the only one who forgot about that game, or am I the only one who never had an experience with the game? Let me know. Anyways, that's gonna do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
This is my spooky basement door, and this is my service dog who just acts weird on top of the basement stairs and does a fake alert.
So this is the door to our mudroom where we come in, and I try to avoid just looking down here. Look at this.
All the windows were boarded up for some reason, which is why it's so dark.
Like, isn't that scary? This is where I took the bell guy. I said my fiance to get changed down here in the morning so he doesn't wake me up. Like, books. Like, it's just so sketchy. This is the oil.
I always feel the need to whisper in the basement, and I always lose phone reception.
We ran out of oil one day, but I don't...
My mom has actually been down here, and she really wants me to throw out that doll.
This all came with the house. And then there's under the stair storage that's like pitch black, which I will not be crawling in.
Some backstory is this house was passed down for 3 generations or so. Yes, there has been deaths in this house. We wanted to renovate, make guest rooms, but everyone we've had over was said they would never sleep down there. They're too scared.
perfect world, you would bulldoze that entire space and start over, because just replacing the carpets and the paint is not going to be enough. I don't necessarily feel specific beings or energies in there as much as you've got residual energy, a lot of it, because I'm feeling like, this is what I'm feeling, around 1945, doctor. Was he a real doctor? Claimed to be a doctor. Maybe went to medical school, had his license taken away, maybe never went to medical school, maybe was doing some sort of new age type thing, calling himself a doctor, bringing in women downstairs to that space, claiming he could help them. Maybe it feels like reproductive, something like that. And coming in and helping women, but really he was harming them, he was hurting them, he was abusing them. And even, I feel like even if you asked neighbors would be like, yeah, people were coming and going and we weren't sure why. I mean, obviously neighbors that maybe heard stories from people who had lived there, because this feels obviously a long time ago, but it was an underground operation. And really, so what you've got is just a lot of residual suffering, manipulation, fear, control, power. And so we want to really just clear that out, because I feel like that doctor that I'm feeling is definitely gone, and is definitely even and is even paying the price for some of the stuff he's done. He was not good. I'm not feeling any energy stuck there. I'm not feeling any women stuck there. This is all just a lot of dark residual energy. You can ultimately turn it into a space that's livable, but you need to bring someone in to clear it for sure, and then remove as much as possible. And then after you do all that renovation, bring someone in to clear it again. My recommendation.
So this lady says that she was going through a really, really hard time. She was pregnant and that her job hadn't given her her maternity leave money, and she had already used all her savings. She didn't have any more money, so she really needed it. Not only was she pregnant, but she also had other small children at home to take care of, and she was about to not have money to feed the kids or like do anything, pay the bills, nothing. Not only was she calling her job, she would show up to her job, she would tell them, hey, I need this money, like this is what you guys owe me, and they would send her back home promising to contact her, and they really wouldn't call her again. So in the midst of her being so worried and not knowing how she was going to feed her kids, she ends up going and asking all of the saints for the favor of helping her. She said that she felt like none of the saints were listening to her, that she couldn't get through to any of them. She was almost going to give birth, and she said that she was so desperate that she did something that she never thought or never imagined that she would do. She asked Lucifer for the favor, and it wasn't to hurt anybody, it wasn't to steal somebody else's money. She just asked him to have her job give her the money that she is owed. She just wanted her job to give her the money that she had already worked for, like they owed her that money. She promised Lucifer that if he helped her, she would bring back a box of cigarettes for him. That very same day, he definitely heard her. The accounting person at her job had not only sent her the maternity leave money, but also gave her 4 weeks of pay, almost as if she hadn't been missing work. She explains that this happened too fast for it to just be a coincidence. She finally felt like she could breathe again, and that all she had to worry about was giving birth to her baby and not how am I gonna feed the rest of my kids. She explains that she's not a devotee to Lucifer, she doesn't pray to him, but in that very moment she was desperate, she needed help, and he came through. She feels like she did the right thing, because there's a difference between asking him for revenge or to hurt somebody versus just getting justice or just getting what you should have gotten. But what do you guys think?
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, scary stories, or paranormal encounters that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. My family refuses to talk about whatever happened in that house, and after hearing this, you'll understand why. This happened when I was around 7 or 8 years old, back when my family had just moved into a house in New South Wales, Australia. It was a 2-story place. The bottom level was just a garage, and everything else, the bedrooms, the living space, it was all upstairs. At first, everything was normal. It was quiet and peaceful and nothing felt off. Until my baby sister's 2nd birthday. We had family over. Everyone was celebrating, and at some point, my cousin pulled me aside and brought me into my room. She had this piece of cardboard with her covered in letters. I recognized it immediately. It was a Ouija board. I told her that I didn't want to mess with it. I'd seen enough videos to know that it was a bad idea. She threatened to tell my mom that I made it and forced her to play. So I gave in. We sat there, both of us, our fingers on it. At first I thought she was moving it, but she kept swearing that she wasn't. And the thing is it was moving. So we asked it who we were talking to, and it spelled out the name of our aunt who had recently passed away. At first we were so happy. We thought somehow we were talking to her again, but then it changed. The tone shifted. It started saying things, mean things, angry things, things I knew my aunt would never say. That's when it hit us. Whatever we were talking to, it wasn't her. We stopped immediately and left the room, pretending like nothing had happened. We didn't tell anyone, but we were terrified, because not only had we contacted something, it had lied to us. A couple of nights later, I woke up in the middle of the night and I heard something. My wardrobe doors sliding open and closed, slowly, back and forth. They had mirrors on them. So when I looked over, I saw a reflection. At the end of my bed was a figure, tall, too tall. It had to hunch just to fit into my room, and it was staring directly at me. I didn't even think. I just got up and ran straight to my parents' room. I woke my dad up, panicked, but he just tried to calm me down. He set up a laptop and told me to watch something until I fell back to sleep. So I sat there trying to distract myself, and then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, steady, walking through the house. At first, I thought it was one of my siblings, but they were all asleep. I got up and peeked out of the doorway. Nothing. But the footsteps didn't stop. They moved across the floor, and then the stairs started creaking, like something was walking up them, one step at a time. I didn't even try to watch the movie after that. I just climbed into bed with my parents and stayed there. The next day, after school, I was in my older sister's room while she was doing my makeup. My baby sister walked in, but then my mom called her, so she left the room. And right after she walked out, we heard it, a loud stomp, and then a deep, guttural growl. My baby sister started screaming. She ran straight to my mom, crying and shaking. We thought maybe my brothers were messing with her, but they were in their room, and they were just as confused as we were. That night, I went into the bathroom. The door was one of those sliding ones, and I never locked it because I was scared of getting stuck. But when I tried to leave, the door wouldn't move at all. I started banging on it, screaming, panicking, until my dad came and opened it from the outside. The door wasn't locked. It wasn't broken. It just wouldn't open. A week later, my uncle and aunt came to stay over. They slept in my room, and I stayed with my older sister. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I kept the TV on, playing random videos just to have noise. And eventually, I fell asleep. The next morning, my uncle told my mom that he saw something during the night, standing in the doorway. He described it as a very tall, dark figure. Freakishly tall, he said. My little brother overheard and told us, and my stomach dropped, because that's exactly what I had seen. Later that day, my mom sat all of us down. She had found the Ouija board, and she wanted to tell us something. Almost every night, my baby sister had been waking up crying, saying someone was in her room. But one night, it got worse. My mom was holding her, trying to calm her down, and something grabbed her hand, tried to pull my baby sister away from her. My mom held on tighter, but it kept pulling harder, almost ripping her out of her arms, until my mom finally got a better grip and held her close, and right in her face, something growled. After that, my mom refused to talk about it ever again. We ended up blessing the house, blessing ourselves, and not long after that, we moved, an hour away, and we never went back. But the scariest part was, according to them, it didn't stay in that house. It followed. And now, it's starting to mimic people.
Did you ever do the Bloody Mary challenge? Now, the legend goes that if you were to turn off the lights and say her name 3 times into the mirror, then she might appear. Sometimes it was said that she would rip out your eyes. Sometimes it was said that she would pull you into the mirror. Now, who was Mary? Some people believe that she could be traced back to the 1800s to a woman named Mary Worth, who lived in a small town in New England. And the story goes that the townspeople thought she was a witch. And when children started to disappear, they suspected that it was Mary Worth. So when they go to her house, they were shocked to discover she was using the blood to bathe in because she thought it would make her younger. So it's said that she was taken and burned at the stake. And her last words were, if you were to say her name in the mirror, then she would return. Some people also speculate that it might come from the 1800s belief that the widows would often call to their deceased husbands in the mirrors, thinking they would return, only to see something else. Now, there was a story from this girl named Ashley. She said when she was younger, she remembered being at school, and she went into the girls' bathroom one day. Well, she overheard some girls laughing and giggling, and she said they were doing the whole Mary thing. So she kind of stayed there and listened to them. She said they did it 3 times, and all of a sudden, the lights went out in the bathroom. She heard these girls start screaming, and finally the lights came back on, and she said the girls started to look at her and were like, did you see her? Did you see her? And she's like, who? And they said, there was a girl right next to you when the lights went out. And she kind of looked around and was like, no, there wasn't. And she said these girls ran out of the bathroom screaming. She stayed behind. She went to go wash her hands. And she said as she looked up in the mirror, she sees this woman with black hair covering her face, wearing this white dress, just standing there behind her in the mirror. She took off running out of the bathroom screaming. And she said she told her teacher. Teacher went in the bathroom. They couldn't find anyone. There was another story from a girl named Caitlin. Caitlin said that her and her brother used to joke around and they would do the whole Mary thing. Well, she said one day she went into the bathroom and she said it 2 times. But she said, you know what, this is ridiculous. And she kind of forgot about it. Well, she said later that night, she went into the bathroom to take a shower. She said as she walked by the mirror, she said it one last time. And she said she got into the shower, and as she turned on the water, the lights went out. She said next thing she knew, the shower curtain fell all the way to the ground, and she ran out of the bathroom screaming. And her mom went in there, she looked, she didn't see anything. Well, she said she told her brother about this, and her brother was like, you're making this up. So about a week later, they're home alone, and they're sitting down in the living room watching a movie, when all of a sudden, they hear the shower turn on upstairs. And they're like, who is in the bathroom? And then they start hearing these cries, like a woman wailing. So they both go upstairs, they go by the bathroom, they slowly open the door, and they said as they went to the curtains and pulled it back, they looked and there was no one there. They ran out of the house until their parents got back. She said a couple weeks later, she was in her bedroom. It's the middle of the night. She hears the shower kick on by itself. So she goes to the bathroom, and she said when she opened the curtain this time, she's seen a woman in a white dress with black hair covering her face laying in the bathtub. So what do you think? Is the legend real?
One look at this house, and I already want to know the lore. It just recently sold in Pennsylvania for $175,000. For some reason, it felt really familiar to me. And then I remembered the haunted house from Hell House LLC, which we all know how that ends, right? But it's got a pool, so there's that. After seeing the first pictures of the inside, I immediately thought there must be a mistake, because I'm pretty sure these are stills from a found footage horror movie. In the description, it says that the house was built in 1840, and I believe it. I've never been to jail, but I imagine that that's what the bathrooms are like there. Red carpeting triggers my fight or flight. I blame The Shining. I think because the house just looks so old, because it is, the kitchen just looks so out of place. I'm not sure if anyone else is keeping track, but this is the 3rd fireplace so far. Let's go see where the red carpeted stairs take us. Now upstairs, we have the bedrooms. One with blue carpet, one with pink, and one with a decomp stain. I'm actually not really sure what this is. It's got an interesting shape to it, but you can't tell me that it's not some sort of resemblance to some of the other listings with decomp stains that we've seen. Across from that room, we have more space with another fireplace, but it's no longer in commission. We have an attic room and just one picture of the basement. So I'm dying to know, how many roommates do you think comes with this house?
I've covered so many cases, this one threw me for a loop. The year is 1974 in New Orleans when a 16-year-old girl is getting ready to give birth to a beautiful baby girl. Her name is Kathy Turkanian, and she's having a really difficult time deciding what to do. Because she was so young, she was feeling the pressure heavily from her family members that were telling her that she was way too young to become a mom and suggesting that she give up her baby for adoption. She gives birth, she names her daughter Alexis Miranda Badger, and she tries to do the best that she can to raise this baby, to give her the life that she wanted her to have, but it was too much. She had no support, she had no help. Her mom was diagnosed with cancer. She wasn't doing well, which meant that Kathy's siblings also needed someone there to help raise them. She also had to work in order to just survive. Trying to balance all of that plus more very quickly became unrealistic. On top of that, she still had her mom in her ear constantly telling her that adoption was her only option. So Kathy then makes the extremely difficult decision that she's pretty much forced into to give her daughter up for adoption, hoping and praying that she would go to a good family. A family who would love her, who would support her, care for her, and be able to give her everything that the world had to offer, things that Kathy herself wasn't able to give her at that time in her life as a teen mom. Alexis, the baby girl, was adopted, and her name was changed to Andrea Bowman. The couple adopting her was a couple from Michigan, Dennis and Brenda Bowman, and it was a closed adoption, meaning that Kathy didn't know the identity of the couple who adopted her baby, didn't know where they were from. She would lose all of her rights to either see or talk to or know anything about her baby, and she would not be given the possibility to have any sort of visits or communication with the adoptive parents nor with her baby. So she did all that she could do. She said bye to her baby girl, and for the following years just convinced herself that she was somewhere in the world living a happy life with a loving family. Kathy went on to live her life. She grew up, she went to school, she got married, years passed, but throughout it all, her baby, who she still thought of as Alexis, was always in the back of her head. Naturally, she was constantly thinking and wondering how she was doing, if she was happy, and she felt an urge to reach out to her, especially after she knew that Alexis had turned 18 years old, then a legal adult. She was so curious about her life and wondered if maybe Alexis, wherever she was in the world, was wondering about her too. The urge to find her only got stronger when Kathy realized that women in her family had a long history of breast cancer. She wanted to be able to tell Alexis because she felt like that would be beneficial for her to know, but she couldn't find her anywhere. We know that she had no contact information for her or for the adoptive parents, but she also couldn't call the adoption agency and ask where her daughter was. She couldn't search her up by name because her name had been changed, so every door that she tried to open was legally shut. As years kept coming and going, something inside of Kathy just could not let it go. She had said, quote, "I could hear her calling me, find me, find me." Kathy thought that what she was feeling was just the guilt of a mother who gave her daughter away, but that's not what it was. In April of 2010, so 36 years after the adoption, Kathy received a letter informing her that her child had gone missing when she was 14 years old in 1989. She had been missing for over 20 years, and the reason why the social worker was reaching out to her wasn't to inform her. They needed something from her because an unidentified body had been found next to a cornfield, and the police needed Kathy's DNA for testing to see if it was her daughter. But before we continue with Kathy, we need to talk about what Alexis/Andrea's life actually looked like growing up inside of the Bowman's house with her adoptive parents. And I am going to be referring to her as Andrea from now on. Andrea grew up in Michigan in a home with Dennis and Brenda Bowman. From the outside, it looked normal enough, but inside, something was very wrong. In 1988, Andrea had raised concerns with staff at her school, expressing fearfulness about going home. For some reason, one day she was so afraid to go home that it got to the point that they ended up calling the police. Andrea was interviewed, and during that interview, she told them that her adoptive father had been S-ing her throughout the night and that her adoptive mother knew but did not care. She was barely a teenager, she was a baby, but she felt like she had no other option than to put on a brave face and finally tell what she thought was a trusted adult the truth. And I imagine it was such a scary thing for her to do, but whatever happened, all she knew was that she did not want to go back to that house. But instead of taking a more careful approach, a social worker just decided to head over to the Bowman's house to confront them and ask her parents about what she had said. And of course, Brenda and Dennis denied everything, and they painted this picture that Andrea was having behavioral issues and that she had been acting out because they had recently told her that she was adopted, and they claimed that that made her really upset. And just like that, no further questions. Andrea was sent back into that house, back to living with a man that she was very clearly afraid of. On top of that, allegations of the mistreatment were not just coming from Andrea herself, they were also coming from her friends who had been invited over to the house and had witnessed it firsthand. One of Andrea's friends knew about the essay because Andrea had confided in her and told her about it. Another friend recalled going over over to the Bowman's house and seeing Dennis Bowman chasing around and putting his hands on Andrea. Another friend stated that while she was over at their house, she remembers thinking that it was weird that everyone else was eating dinner, everyone had burgers, but Andrea wasn't allowed to have a burger. She was only allowed to eat a quote-unquote leftover sandwich consisting of only bread and condiments. When they were all seated at the dinner table, her friend has said, quote, Andrea made a comment that that's all she was allowed to eat, so Dennis came across the table right in front of me and hit her so hard he almost knocked her out of the chair. She started bawling her eyes out, of course. Brenda sat there and did nothing about it. The friends that knew about how Andrea was being treated all encouraged her to leave, but at the same time, of course, they were all like 13, 14 years old, so they couldn't really do much to help. But also there was the fact that Andrea didn't really want to leave. Well, of course she wanted to leave, but she wouldn't because Brenda, the adoptive mother, had just given birth to Andrea's little sister, Vanessa, like a year prior. Andrea loved that baby like she was her own. She took care of her. She changed her diaper. She would feed her. She'd watch over her, protect her. She could not bear the thought that if she did leave, there was no telling what would happen with Vanessa or if they would be even kept together or not. So her friends would encourage her to leave and Andrea would just say, no way, I need to stay. I need to take care of Vanessa. 13 to 14 years old, by the way, she was a baby herself. The only plan that Andrea could really imagine working out was waiting until Vanessa was older and then going to find her real mom, Kathy. But she never got that chance because on March 11th of 1989, Andrea Bowman disappeared. Dennis Bowman was the person who called the police to report her as missing. All he said was that she had ran away. He told them that they had been having issues with her behavior and that one day he left the house, he came back, Andrea was gone, and so was a stack of money. So basically he said, I have a troubled child, she stole money from me, packed a bag and left. Okay, cool, thanks, bye. And authorities, for whatever reason, just took his word for it. The case was classified as a runaway and Andrea was basically simply forgotten. So fast forward 2 decades, Andrea has been missing this entire time. Kathy gets a letter in the mail asking for a DNA test to see if the human remains found belonged to her daughter. Without any hesitation, Kathy gave up her DNA. It was tested, but it wasn't a match. So that did not solve Andrea's disappearance, but what it did do was install this strong determination inside of Kathy to figure it out. Whatever happened to her daughter, she needed to know. She needed to know what her life was like, how and why she disappeared, and where she was now. Even though Kathy hadn't been in her daughter's life, she was now, and she was not going to rest until she got some answers. Through doing a lot of digging on social media, Kathy was able to find out that her daughter's name had been changed to Andrea Bowman, that her adoptive parents were a couple named Dennis and Brenda Bowman, and that they lived in Hamilton, Michigan. Kathy decided to set up a Facebook page and named it Find Andrea M. Bowman. She also started going to missing persons conferences. She kept digging on social media, trying to gather just as much information as she could. And then Andrea's old school friends started reaching out, and the stories that they were telling Kathy were horrifying. It was from them that Kathy was made aware about the SA claims and the mistreatment that Andrea had experienced in her own home at the hands of Dennis Bowman. Kathy then finds a way to get in contact with a retired Michigan detective who was familiar with Andrea's case, and according to her, he tells her something along the lines of, something is weird here, something's fishy, something's weird, this case has not been handled properly. So she decides to use the Freedom of Information Act, aka FOIA. Kathy submitted a formal FOIA request to obtain Dennis Bowman's public criminal records. She gets them, and what she finds out about this man only makes her about 1,000,000 times more suspicious. It turns out that he had a very serious charge from back in 1980, so this was years before Andrea disappeared. So one summer night, a 19-year-old girl experienced the most traumatizing thing that has ever happened to her. She had been riding her bike home when a motorcycle rode her off the road. This man then attempted to lead her into the woods into a secluded area, and when she refused to walk into the woods, he pulled out a weapon. Luckily, when he used it, he missed her, so she started trying to get back to her bike as fast as possible so that she could ride away from this man that was very clearly trying to harm her. A passing vehicle distracted the man for just enough seconds for the girl to get back on her bike and ride away as fast as she could, until she found another car who then eventually helped her get home safely. She was able to give a description of the man, and in a lineup, she very quickly pointed out the man responsible. And what do you know? It was Dennis Bowman. He pled guilty, but for whatever reason, he was only sentenced to 5 years. So he served his sentence. Meanwhile, his wife was at home with Andrea and her little sister Vanessa. Then Dennis was just released and returned back home. Then in 1988, he got arrested and charged again because he was breaking and entering into a former female coworker's house over and over again. This coworker obviously knew who Dennis was, and she was practically losing her mind because every so often she would hear noise inside the house, making her think that someone had broken in. Sometimes there would be solid evidence that someone had broken in. For example, her blinds would be either ripped off or cut off. And very often as well, many things inside of her home would be either taken, missing, or moved. She had her suspicions about Dennis Bowman because she always had a very weird, bad gut feeling about him. And eventually, when his house was searched, they found a bag of her belongings hidden away somewhere in his house. So it was him that had been breaking and entering and stealing things from her and scaring her. He had been doing it for months months plural, he offered up a pathetic lie claiming that him and said coworker were very close and that she had been allowing him to stay with her. But the coworker was literally like, dude, what? I only know you from work. I want absolutely nothing to do with you in my personal life. You actually scare me because you're weird and gross. I think he broke into her house like over 20 times, maybe even more than 30. And at one point, one of his other excuses was that he needed to break in because he needed to use the bathroom. Ultimately for that, he was sentenced for 1 year and then released. So, years were passing by, and because the body found was not Andrea, she was still a missing person. Kathy was still doing everything in her power to get answers and to start connecting the dots. All signs so far in her mind are pointing directly towards Dennis Bowman. One day, she decides to use Google Earth to pull up the Bowman's house and to see if she could drop her little pin down there to look around the property. She is zooming in closer and closer, and she sees an area in the backyard that looks just weird. It looks disturbed. It's a concrete block. And something inside of her told her that there she was. Kathy became convinced that Dennis Bowman had gotten rid of her daughter Andrea and buried her in his backyard. Kathy was not giving up. She started calling the Bowmans directly multiple times a day. She had a billboard up on the main road to their house offering an $11,000 reward for an arrest in the case. She camped outside of their property. She confronted Brenda Bowman directly. She was giving it her all. And then in November of 2019, there was a complete breakthrough in the case, but not one that many people expected. Two detectives, one from the Michigan State Police and one from the police department in Virginia, happened to both attend the same cold case homicide conference. And they very quickly realized that they were both looking at Dennis Bowman as a suspect in two different separate cases. He was a suspect for a different homicide case in Virginia, and he ended up being arrested for that. Once he was behind bars and facing those charges in Virginia, investigators began trying to build some sort of rapport with him. Slowly, carefully, they wanted him to start talking, and start talking he did, eventually. It wasn't until early 2020 when Dennis Bowman finally gave a confession. Andrea was gone. She had been gone for years, and he was the person responsible. According to Dennis Bowman, this is what happened the night of March 11th, 1989. He said that he came home and found Andrea walking out of a bedroom. When he asked what she was doing, she told him that she was leaving, and if he tried to stop her, she would tell everyone that he had been essaying her. That made him really angry. He swung at her, causing her to lose balance and fall. He told his wife, quote, her head rolled over and she just stared like doll eyes, end quote. She wasn't responsive, but instead of calling for help, Dennis decided to get rid of her completely. He separated Andrea's 14-year-old body into pieces, placed her remains in a barrel, and then called the police to report her missing. When the Bowmans moved to a new house in 1990, Dennis dug up the barrel and reburied it in the backyard of their new property. Quote, I dug the hole and I put the barrel in. She's been right there the whole time, end quote. Andrea had been buried in the backyard, right where Kathy had always said that she was. In February of 2020, investigators recovered Andrea's skeletal remains from a shallow grave buried beneath a concrete slab in the backyard of the Bowman home. When the remains were tested against Kathy's DNA, it was confirmed that they were those of 14-year-old Andrea. Kathy said it was as if her daughter had been, quote, screaming in that backyard for years, end quote. On December 22nd of 2021, Dennis Bowman pleaded no contest to second-degree murder, and he was sentenced to 35 to 50 years in prison. This was now on top of the 2 life sentences that he was already facing for that other case in Virginia. It was the murder of a different young girl named Kathleen Doyle. At his sentencing, the judge stated, quote, his numerous behavior in this case, other convictions all indicate Mr. Bowman is a serious, dangerous man that has harmed many communities, many families. It's impossible to even articulate the words to describe what he has done. Reading what he has done is sickening. And pretty much throughout it all, Brenda Bowman stood right by her husband's side. I mean, she did say that he did confess to her about Andrea being buried in their backyard, and she claimed that she didn't know. I'm gonna let you be the judge of that. But she's never been charged for anything, and in other horrible cases, she has stood right by her husband's side, even after he's been convicted. As for Kathy, the latest that I could find is that she's still fighting because guess what? Andrea's ashes were handed to Dennis's wife, Andrea's adoptive mother, Brenda Bowman. They were given to her. I read an update from 2025 in which Kathy said that she was preparing a civil court fight to get more information about the location of her daughter's ashes. She also talked about campaigning to ban close adoption in memory of her daughter, saying that she was forced into close adoption in which records of the biological parents were kept sealed, which she believes prioritizes the adoptive parents over the child. Quote, I don't know if I could do it in my lifetime, but it's time to get a movement started, end quote. Insane, and my heart breaks that Kathy thought that she was doing the right thing when she gave up her daughter for adoption because she thought that she was giving her to a loving family, hopefully to have a good life. And then this makes me sick. That is all I have for today's case. Thank you for spending time with me today and for listening to Andrea's story. Hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
Get ready with me while I tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have a ghost story, scary story, or paranormal encounter that you'd like to share, you can send it to the email in my bio. It happened when I was in high school during a week that should have felt completely normal. My aunt had to leave the country unexpectedly, so my mom decided we'd stay at her house to help out, watch my grandma, keep an eye on my younger cousins, just hold everything together while she was gone. I ended up sleeping in my little cousin's room, and that room had these huge mirrored closet doors, floor to ceiling, the kind where even in the dark you can still make out shapes, movement, reflections. That didn't feel quite right. The first night, everything was fine. But sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up. Not suddenly, not panicked, just aware. I woke up because I heard the bedroom door slowly opening. At first, it didn't scare me. I just assumed it was my mom. Maybe she was checking on me or grabbing something. Her suitcase was in that room, so it wouldn't have been weird. So I cracked my eyes open just slightly, expecting to see her standing there, but no one was there, and the door was open. I don't like this. It was open wide enough that someone had to have pushed it, but the doorway was completely empty. I immediately shut my eyes again, like if I didn't look at it, it wouldn't be real, and then I heard it. Footsteps, slow and careful, walking across the room. What? Not loud, not brushed, just deliberate. And they stopped right next to my bed. Next to me. I could feel it. Oh no. That heavy, suffocating feeling of someone standing over you, watching you, even though your eyes are closed. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe any louder than I absolutely had to. I just slowly turned my body, pretending I was still asleep, until I was facing the mirrored closet. After a few seconds, I forced my eyes to open again because I needed to see if someone was really there. I would see them in the mirror, but there was nothing. No reflection, no shadow, no figure behind me, just the empty room staring back at me. But I could still feel it right there. There is no chance that I am looking in a mirror to see if somebody's actually there because I can feel them there, and then seeing that nobody's there, and then me just staying in bed. I am getting up so fast, I don't even care if you grab me at that point because then I wouldn't feel crazy, okay? I shut my eyes again immediately. At that point, I wasn't even trying to understand it. I just wanted it to go away. After what felt like forever, the footsteps started again. Slow and steady, moving away from the bed back across the room. I heard the door shift and then click shut. Silence. And somehow I fell back asleep. I don't know how, I don't know why, but I did. The next morning, everything felt normal again, but almost too normal. My mom was in the kitchen making breakfast, my little cousins were running around playing, and my grandma was sitting at the table. Everything felt safe, until my mom casually asked, "Did anyone get up in the middle of the night?" Oh, no. No one answered her. And then she said she had gone downstairs during the night to make one of the girls a bottle. While she was in the kitchen, she heard the floorboards upstairs creaking. Not one or two sounds, but like someone walking. She got worried and thought maybe my grandma had gotten up and might fall. So she walked to the bottom of the stairs and looked up. And she said she saw an ankle. Just an ankle. Disappearing into the exact room I had been sleeping in. I'm freaked. I'm freaked. She thought it was me just going to the bathroom or heading back to bed. And I didn't say anything right then. I didn't want to scare anyone, but later that night, I told her everything. And after that, I never slept in that room again. I don't blame you. What do you actually mean? That is terrifying. I know that an ankle really just does not seem like it would be, you know, a scary part of the body, but hearing things and not knowing what it is or who it is, and then looking up and seeing just that, you guys, there's absolutely no way.
Megan is Missing is one of those stories that keeps me up at night, and you guys have been begging me to cover it, so today I'm finally doing that. But before we get into anything, I need to clear something up first. Megan is Missing is not a real case. It's a movie. It's fiction. A film that some guy made on a very low budget in the late 2000s and released in 2011, and which then basically just sat there collecting dust for almost a decade until TikTok got a hold of it in 2020 and absolutely lost its mind. But let me explain why so many people think it's real, because that part of the story is actually fascinating. The movie follows a 14-year-old girl named Megan who starts texting back and forth with a boy that she meets online who goes by Josh. He tells her he's 17 and Megan believes him despite never actually seeing his face because his webcam is always conveniently broken. And over time, Megan, who had been abused by her stepfather since she was just 9 years old and who was always surrounded by boys at school who mostly just looked at her body like she was something to use, starts falling for him because she was lonely and desperate for somebody to just actually see her. And Josh, it felt like he did. He listened. He remembered things that she told him. He made her feel like the most important person in the room. And for a while, it was actually perfect for her. Until one night, Josh convinces her to come meet him in person behind a local diner. And Megan, who had been waiting weeks to finally put a face to this boy she's been talking to every single day, she breaks the rules, sneaks out of the house, and goes to meet him. But then she never comes home because that sweet, patient, understanding boy she thought she knew, that was never real. Josh is not 17. He is a grown man who's been using her loneliness as bait from the very beginning. And the moment she showed up behind that diner, the act was over. He kidnaps her and takes her to his basement where he had already built a torture chamber just for her. Weeks passed and Megan's best friend Amy, 13 years old, just a kid, starts investigating on her own to try to find her. She starts messaging Josh directly, and pretty quickly she suspects that he's behind it. And Josh, realizing that Amy could blow this entire thing wide open, starts stalking her, learning her routines, following her to the places that she goes alone, the places she feels safe, until one day she's finally alone and he kidnaps her too and brings her to that same basement right alongside Megan. And what happens to the both of them in that basement, what those last 22 minutes actually show you, is what nobody who has seen this movie can get out of their head. I'll just say this much. There is a scene where Josh places Amy's childhood teddy bear in front of her while he humiliates her. And at the very end, he tells her he'll let her go if she gets into the barrel. And she does. But when she opens the barrel, Megan is inside. But here's the thing, none of it is real. And the reason so many people couldn't tell is because the director of this movie did everything in his power to make sure that you believed it was. The director, Michael Goy, before he even wrote a single line of this script, he went and buried himself in actual FBI files, real documented cases of children who went missing after being contacted by strangers online, real predator profiles, real case notes from investigators who had seen what happens to these kids. And he took all of that research, case after case after case after case, and he composited it into one single fictional story. So when the movie opens up with the words based on real events, he's not lying to you. He's technically telling you the truth, but it's not retelling one specific case the way that, say, Girl in the Bunker retells a story of Elizabeth Shoah, a real girl who was actually kidnapped and locked underground by a man that she had met online. That's a real case, a real girl and a real crime. Megan is Missing is different. There is no Megan Stewart, there is no Amy, and there is no Josh. But the events, the method, the grooming, the way that it escalates, the way it ends, all of that are real things that do happen in the world to real victims. Michael Goy didn't want you to just know the story. He wanted you to feel it. So he made a choice that would change everything about how the film landed. He shot the entire thing like it was footage recovered from a real crime scene. Grainy webcam footage, shaky phone camera clips, fake news broadcasts. Nothing about it looked like a movie. It looked like real footage somebody had actually pulled off of a dead girl's laptop. And that was completely 100% intentional. He wanted you to feel like you were watching something real because he wanted the message to be loud and clear. Don't trust strangers. And it worked, but maybe a little too well. Because when the movie went viral on TikTok in 2020, millions of people, and I mean millions, genuinely believed they were watching real footage of a real missing girl. People were posting warnings, people were crying on camera, people were tagging police departments in the comments demanding answers to a case that didn't exist. The panic was completely real, even though the case wasn't. So I'm sorry to break it to you guys, but Megan is not missing. But although the movie is not real, it's still something that happens to teenagers every single day. There is no Megan Stewart, but there are so many girls with her story in those FBI files. Girls who met somebody online who knew exactly the right things to say, someone who built enough trust over enough weeks that by the end of it, these girls would have done anything for them. And when they did, that's when they were gone. The goal of this movie was to attack a huge and growing crisis of teenagers trusting strangers on the internet and then going missing. The film was designed to scare parents and make teenagers think twice before they typed back to somebody they'd never met in person. And it worked. But like I said, maybe a little too well. But then again, what if that was the goal all along? Please stay safe out there, you guys. Stranger danger. I'll see you in my next video. Group hug.
Hey TikTok, I'm back with another spooky scary story time. This took part like a year ago. So it was me, my mom, and my dad, and we had got a rental. It was a Tesla, and we got it pretty early in the day. We enjoyed it the whole entire day. Nothing weird happened until we went to one of our family members' houses that is like so-called haunted. And the reason I say so-called haunted is because they say that a lot of weird activity goes on there. And if y'all want a story time on that, just let me know. Yeah, we get in the Tesla and we go over to their house. And y'all know how like the Teslas can tell you when there's people around the car. So as soon as we pulled up there was like 2 figures on the Tesla screen, like on the right side of the car. But everybody that was like a part of our family was not outside yet. Everybody was inside of the house. So we was like, that's where maybe it's a glitch or something. We went in the house, you know, weird activity was going on in the house. Like we kept hearing footsteps while we were talking, but only like when the conversations were getting loud. The kitchen light would keep turning on. And then after a while, we was just like, we're going to leave. We're not going to stay here for too long because now we're actually seeing the weird stuff that is happening. So on our way back out, that's when we're getting in the car. And in the middle of us getting in the car, it shows a little figure like getting in the car with us. It looked like a person was trying to like walk in the car after I opened the door, get in the car with me. And I'm like, looking at it, I'm like, what the hell? Do y'all see that? I'm talking to my parents. Do y'all see that? And they both look at it, and it was just like weird. Inside of the car, even though the car wasn't like on already before we turned it on and ended up leaving, it was really, really cold in the car. Now, mind you, it was around like the springtime, so like I don't really know if it's normal for you to like breathe out air and still see smoke during that time, but like that's how cold it was in this Tesla rental that we was in. So after that, we ended up leaving, and a long story short, we had to give the Tesla back literally the next day. We didn't tell the people that we got the Tesla from anything about that, but like on TikTok I see so many different story times and like actual proof of people showing like their Teslas are saying that there's people around them, but they're not. Yeah, if you want more spooky, scary story times, follow me and comment for more.